We are siblings, born of the same parents. Yet, our destinies differ greatly. My sister successfully awakened her weapon, mastering attack magic and becoming a hero. Avenging our parents is now within reach. Meanwhile, I, her brother, with all my fervent devotion, pray earnestly every day. But all I receive is a never-before-seen resurrection skill. Looking at the priest's furrowed brow, I understand this skill can only be used once in my lifetime. This was destined to prevent him from becoming a great hero. Those around him looked at this good-for-nothing with contempt. Even his own sister looked down on him, and urged him to give up. But he still refused to give up. Even if he were only a third-rate hero, he would continue down this path. But what was heartbreaking was, my teammates' betrayal shattered my only hope. Pushed off the cliff, my brother became the perfect buffer for their escape. But my weak brother was no match for the countless man-eating beasts. He was devoured. His life was extinguished. Luckily, my resurrection skill activated, giving me another chance to live. But I never expected. But I'm no longer in human form. Instead, I'm the demonic creature I despise. Even a low-level skeleton, unable to speak. An indescribable sadness welled up in my heart. I risk my life fighting every day. Yet I still suffer such ridicule. Maybe my sister was right. Maybe it's time to stop. Uncontrollable tears welled up from those two holes. Is it really only the strong who are worthy of being heroes? However, the man suddenly sprang into action. Because he suddenly realized, he was already a monster. That meant he could also level up, evolve, and gain skills like a monster. Even becoming an S-class hero in the future wasn't impossible. It seems this body isn't entirely a bad thing after all. So, in the following days, the man cleverly used a feigned death to subtly gather intelligence in this cave. For example, this goblin before him was a relatively weak monster, but with only one episode left, he still couldn't defeat it head-on. The moment the goblin was distracted by the noise on the ground, the man, suddenly appearing from behind, struck with a sword. The goblin died instantly. As the system prompt sounded, 3 experience points successfully acquired. The man couldn't help but admire his own cleverness. What a terrifying talent. Looking at the level-up panel, the man believed that once he reached level 5, he should be able to experience his first evolution. It's just that the experience gained from killing low-level monsters is pitifully small. Continuing like this, it might take another few decades to achieve the final goal. To become powerful quickly, he had to find more advanced targets. So, following the same method, the man finally waited for a level 7 red-eyed dire wolf. As long as he could take it down, he would surely meet the evolution requirements. Although the opponent was much stronger, after a few days of observation, the man quickly found a way. That is, the red-eyed dire wolf has a characteristic. Whether it's a hero's corpse or a backpack, it will pique its interest. And as the man expected, the mere sight of a skeleton, the ferocious wolf chose to ignore him, instead heading towards the luggage. It was at that very moment that the man seized the opportunity and suddenly attacked. By the time the wolf reacted, a long sword had already pierced its body. Even though it didn't die instantly, the momentum of its fall over the cliff made it almost impossible to move. The man who followed closely behind landed another blow the instant it hit the ground. Although he ultimately dealt with this vile beast, due to the difference in levels, the demonic king's dying counterattack successfully crippled the man's arm. But with the experience points arriving, it was all worthwhile. The man even grew to like this strange body. The next second, countless streams of energy surged into his body. All his shattered bones slowly healed during the evolution, until a blinding light flashed. The system sounded its prompt again, evolution successful. Earth-grade monster ghoul cheese skill, regeneration. To restore his human appearance as quickly as possible, he decided to cheer up and work hard to level up. Even more surprising, despite being a monster, he possesses multiple skills. Compared to humans who can only have one, he, a combination of monstrous body and human intelligence, might truly become a supreme S-class warrior. Looking at his system panel, the man couldn't believe how much stronger he'd become so quickly than his former self. Since his first evolution and gaining the ability to regenerate, the man effortlessly killed the giant rat whale and the pig-headed monster in succession. Even suffering injuries, regeneration quickly healed him. And as an undead being, he seemed to feel no fatigue whatsoever. The only issue was that he still couldn't speak. If his sister saw him like this, she would have killed him before recognizing him as her brother. Even for the sake of his only sister, she needs to recover as soon as possible. Just then, a sudden sound immediately alerted the man. He thought it was a spirit approaching, but unexpectedly, it was a human. And most importantly, his younger sister was among them. Although the dungeon isn't far from town, the man didn't expect to encounter humans so soon. Meanwhile, their argument grew louder and louder. It turned out to be because of insufficient medicine preparation. The younger sister was loudly scolding the pink-haired girl who was trying to mediate, but the girl said the situation wasn't that bad. Minor injuries can be cleaned simply, it's fine. But my usually meticulous sister is still relentless. Someone who doesn't even take their work seriously. Can they really be relied on? And this is the dungeon. What if a monster really bites you? What will we do? Can you bear that responsibility? For a moment, the boy was left speechless. Even the brother peeking from the side couldn't help but exclaim, "She's still that aggressive little sister." Though what she said was right. He was too harsh. But his inner relaxation caused his fingers to accidentally knock against the wall, making a sound. In an instant, everyone's nerves tensed. The little sister even directly activated her ice magic array. He immediately launched an attack towards the source of the sound. Seeing the ice spikes coming at him quickly, the man was stunned. This little girl is too ruthless. Before he could react further, the ice crystal, penetrating through the rock layers, sliced through his arm. Without cover, he was immediately exposed to everyone. They all stared at his face, emotionless. The man knew something big was about to happen. After all, at only level 14, how could he possibly beat the three of them? What's more, there's his incredibly powerful genius sister. Ghouls have healing skills. Lena was the first to analyze the target, so we need to take it down in one go. The boy named Derek offered a strategy at that moment. The man must be regretting what he did earlier. I feel sorry for him. But his sister's words are the most speechless. After pushing him to a desperate situation at a safe distance, then killing him with one blow is the most effective method. Okay. I didn't expect you, little girl, to be the cruelest. Facing an 18-year-old sister, a man also knows that he has no chance of winning. But to escape from these three people, it seems it's not that easy. However, the grim situation doesn't allow him much time to think. A sword, spitting fire, attacks the man. In an instant, a flaming rocket cleaves towards him. At the same time, Lena makes a quick move, instantly blocking his escape route. In a moment of desperation, the man could only endure this attack. Although he didn't want to harm humans, if he didn't resist now, he would really have to fight. Seeing the rocket coming down again, the man didn't retreat. Instead, he moved forward. He kicked a stone, and directly stopped Derek's attack. But before he could be too surprised, the monster unexpectedly pressed itself close to his body. Then, it forcefully pushed its palm against his chest. Derek gasped for air, sitting on the ground, unable to move. Seeing the monster about to escape, Lena, once again utilizing her superior speed, gave chase. The man understood. It's not yet time for me to retreat unscathed. So, she resorted to the same tactic, turning back to face humanity once more. Relying on her regenerative abilities, she fearlessly blocked the attack. Immediately, the claw that had been aimed at humanity, was batted away with a backhand. Humanity could never have imagined a ghoul would actually use strategy to defeat them, and that was precisely the man's plan. But the next second, the triumphant man tensed up again. It was a magical incantation. In an instant, countless ice shards shattered most of the muscles in the man's left leg. The immense impact sent the man crashing to the ground. He'd accounted for everything. I actually forgot about my strongest sister. At this rate, we're really doomed. The man struggled to lift his body. He used the last of his magic to heal his injuries. Only after experiencing it firsthand, did the man realize how absurdly strong his sister's attack really was. Although regeneration only takes a minute to fully recover. But do I really have 1 minute left? Camille, expressionless, chanted the spell again. In the center of the huge magic circle, an ice crystal trident precisely targeted the monster before her. The ghoul, severely wounded, was now like a fish on a chopping board. However, it seemed, he didn't want to give up just yet. He began to choke himself. Then, he laboriously produced an obscure and unintelligible note. But Cocomile instantly looked shocked and pale. The attack originally aimed at the monster was deflected slightly. Faced with his companion's questioning, he didn't understand why he had done that. It was just a subconscious impulse telling him he had to. Looking at the huge ice crystal, the man was truly grateful that calling out his sister's name had worked. Otherwise, I really dare not imagine the consequences. Meanwhile, regeneration finally completed the repair of the wound. Watching my sister sing the magic again, this time, the man wouldn't give him a chance. He decisively extended his claws and charged at him. My sister was so scared that she interrupted her spell, but the expected attack did not come. Instead, Camille saw the ghoul turn and run into the darkness. This made Camille even more puzzled. Was it a feint, or was there another reason? But what was even stranger was, why did it seem like he heard his brother's call just now? But that was definitely a ghoul, an undead creature. Hopefully, he just misheard. His brother, who had luckily survived, was still terrified. It seems that besides searching for monsters later, I'll also have to avoid some humans. But just as he was about to go the other way, he was suddenly startled. His sister and her group were heading deeper into the dungeon. You know, humans can't stay in the dungeon for long, because the strong dark magic here constantly erodes humans. Therefore, unless they are fully prepared, humans generally do not venture too deep. They are well aware of the dangers. The man understands this very well, but if they are discovered again, he is certain to meet his death. So, the man can only follow them from a distance. However, soon, they suddenly stopped in their tracks. The discovery of a warrior's corpse means danger is close at hand, but this still doesn't deter Camille's determination to continue. Although her companions are increasingly worried about the dangers ahead, Camille remains steadfast. She has explored this many times before. She asks everyone to cooperate. With their current skill level, it should be fine. So I'm supposed to be his second in command. A seed of doubt about Camille began to sprout in Derek's heart. Meanwhile, the man lurking in the shadows, besides worry, felt more a lack of understanding towards his sister. Although powerful monsters tend to gather in the deepest, most magically potent areas, there are always exceptions. Caution is paramount in the forbidden underground city. But why would my usually cautious younger sister take such a risk? But the next second, the man's expression turned serious. The surrounding environment began to shake violently. Then, unexpectedly, the level 20 ogre, who should have been deep within, appeared before everyone. Faced with such a powerful opponent, if they couldn't escape successfully, there will definitely be casualties. The only thing I can do is distract the ogres. But he quickly dismissed the idea. Because in his current state, it would only make them think they were surrounded. It would backfire, causing them to panic. The unexpected strong enemy quickly caused chaos in the team. But Camille, drawing on the power of her military-grade magic, remained confident that teamwork could handle the monsters before them. Derek, however, wasn't so sure. But the imminent danger forced him to face it head-on. He'd just ignited his blazing sword, hadn't even gotten close, when the ogre sent him flying with a single blow. Meanwhile, Lena seized the gap in the monster's attack perfectly. In a flash, she appeared behind it. However, the monster's reaction speed exceeded her expectations. The thick club smashed down on her the moment she appeared. The seemingly casual blow severely injured Lena. Fortunately, Camille's ice magic was charging up at that moment. Two enormous ice swords instantly struck the monster's vital points. Surprisingly, one of the pieces was easily deflected by a wooden stick. The monster caught the remaining piece with its bare hand. With a little effort, it was crushed instantly. Camille didn't expect that her proud magic would be completely ineffective against this creature. The man witnessing all this became even more anxious, because he clearly felt that there was no coordination between them at all. This was clearly a team assembled by Xylans. Things are starting to go south, but Camille seems to want to try again. He immediately asked two companions to continue diverting the monster's attention. As long as they buy him enough time, there's still a chance. But Derek was already having second thoughts. The gap in speed and strength made him completely lack confidence in facing the monster again. And Camille's words at this moment seemed like he was speaking from a position of privilege. But it seemed impossible to escape the monster's pursuit by simply running away. It seems I have no choice. I can only listen to Camille. After a brief consultation with Lena, the two showed a slight smile and a hint of guilt, respectively. Then the two began to continuously harass and circle the monster. Meanwhile, Tamir could only go for broke, chanting his most powerful ice magic on the spot. But at the same time the magic circle appeared. Derek, however, seemed to have finally waited for his chance. He immediately called out Lena's name. The next second, Lena appeared in a flash, bringing Derek along behind Camille. Camille never expected that they would betray her at this critical moment. But the approaching man-eating ants didn't allow her to dwell on it. Fortunately, the ice hair technique was completed at that moment. The immense pressure seemed to frighten even the monster. In an instant, the ice spears shot out, easily severing its arm. But Camille, completely unprepared, took the blow directly to her frail body and was flung several meters. Watching the severely injured monster become even more frenzied, Derek finally voiced his discontent. It was all your fault from the start. You insisted on going so deep, and I still don't understand. Why do you insist on finding me? A warrior of my brother's low level has disappeared. What else could it be besides death? What? It's like that? The man finally understood. Actually, his sister had been worried about him all along. Meanwhile, his movements quickened slightly. Seeing the huge mallet swing down at her, Camille, powerless, gave up struggling. Even as she fell unconscious, she still blamed her idiot brother. Why was she so weak, and so reckless? Just in the nick of time, the man who finally arrived punched the ogre in the head. A completely unexpected blow. It did manage to successfully stop his attack. But now the man will have to bear his wrath alone. Although their levels differ greatly. Luckily, my sister successfully severed one of the monster's arms earlier. This not only effectively narrowed the gap between them, but also created an opening for the man's counterattack. But just as he concentrated his attack on the left side, but he found that the ogre's massive attack range still made it difficult to approach. If so, then he couldn't keep making pointless attacks. So the man decisively changed his strategy. He activated serious dodge mode. Although this would be very physically demanding, as long as he dodged its attacks like a fly, he would surely enrage the big guy. Soon, the ogre couldn't withstand the mortal's harassment. Enraged, it bared its large teeth and lunged at the man. And this was exactly what the man had hoped for. Even if he lost an arm, he had to get close to the ogre. His target wasn't the heart protected by the ribcage, nor the brain protected by the skull. Instead, he sank his teeth into the monster's neck. In an instant, the behemoth collapsed to the ground, lifeless. As the system prompt sounded, Lon Ren's level actually increased by 4 levels, directly to level 18. He hadn't expected his method to actually succeed. As for his injuries, just need to rest a little bit, and I'll immediately recover. I have to say, this skill is really useful. As long as I'm not completely dead, I can recover from any injury, but right now, the priority is to get my sister to a safe place. At the same time, the man also understood, if I don't do something, my little sister will definitely come back here again. Coincidentally, on the way back, the man unexpectedly found his lost sword. This gave the man an idea. A sound from the cave entrance instantly caught the attention of the two warriors. It was a perverted ghoul, preparing to attack a girl. Speak quickly about the inside matter. A sword flew past the man's forehead. Shortly after the monster left, Camille gradually regained consciousness. He had no memory of the ghoul being driven away. He only felt as if someone had saved him, and had taken something from him, and something was taken from him, and it was a very familiar feeling. But Camille quickly dismissed the unrealistic thought. Is that sword yours, girl? Only then did the girl realize that she was holding a short sword in her arms. The next second, that familiar feeling surged through her again, until she saw the inscription. Only then did he understand. So my brother really wasn't dead. He's still alive. Tears welled up uncontrollably. The long-suppressed sadness and grief were released all at once. Meanwhile, the man rushing towards the darkness would once again embark on his path of upgrading and evolution. Endless battles, all for the sake of regaining my human form, and reuniting with my sister. However, the experience gained from these small monsters is pathetically low. Without powerful monsters providing experience, significant improvement is impossible. But even so, the man doesn't want to encounter those creatures again, because he understood that his last victory was just luck. If that situation happened again, no matter how many lives he had, it wouldn't be enough. But the reality was always contrary to his wishes. A hand holding a sword slowly approached the man's back. A dazzling red light flashed past. The corpse insect in his hand split in two instantly. The immense power made the man shudder in fear. He looked closely. He realized it was a level 21 gargoyle. But how could a monster above level 20 appear here? He was utterly puzzled. But the relentless attacks didn't allow him any time to think. A purple light began to gather in the monster's mouth. The next second, a searing flame erupted. His arm, used to block, was instantly burned. But before the man could catch his breath, the cunning stone statue, seizing the opportunity, thrust out another sword. Though difficult, he managed to dodge the fatal blow. But the following punch, he could no longer escape. My head was smashed against a stone. The world spun. The man understood. This was beyond his capabilities. Running away was his only chance of survival. But what he never expected was that this thing was so fast. He watched as the gargoyle's greatsword descended. But the man, instead of retreating, advanced. He punched him directly in the head. Surprisingly, the punch had absolutely no effect on him. Instead, with a casual swipe of his hand, he sent the man flying. However, as the man tried to escape, he was stopped by a cliff. Meanwhile, the gargoyle caught up. A searing flame surged towards the man again, but he wouldn't fall for the same trick twice. When the gargoyle tried the same tactic, it discovered that the spot where he had been was empty. It turns out the man was hiding on the cliff face below the cliff. He was waiting for the moment the gargoyle flew down. 10,000 meters in the air. Even the strongest body couldn't withstand such an impact. Especially since he was nothing more than a monster made of pieced-together stones. Gained 108 experience points. Level increased to 20. Incredible. So the man managed another level skip kill on a monster. I have to admit, he's got quite a few tricks up his sleeve. And next, the moment the man had been eagerly awaiting finally arrived. With the sound of a system prompt. Bright green fur suddenly covered his entire body. Gradually, the surface of his skin began to crack. As my body shed its flesh, it began to fill out. This evolution seemed more thorough than ever before. It also brought me unprecedented pain. Ghouls evolving into transforming beasts. Looking at my reflection in the water, I was very happy. I seemed to have a human body. But what's with this mask? Why can't I take it down? So it's an undead monster that attacks by mimicking human forms. It's said that no one who has seen their true faces has ever returned alive. This is far more terrifying than a ghoul. That's undeniable. Because even from its stats, it's clearly much stronger than a ghoul. As for this new skill called disguise, the man is already eager to experience what it's like to be human again. The mask on my face suddenly floated up. As the light on my body gradually faded, my reflection, my true face, appeared on the clear water's surface. The magical sight made the man exclaim in surprise, and he was astonished to find that even his voice had returned, though it was still a little hoarse. But in my current state, he could basically blend into the crowd. But he quickly discovered a new problem. Maintaining the disguise constantly drained his magic. Once his magic ran out, the disguise would fail. But by continuously upgrading, he could increase the disguise's duration. This made him even more eager for his next evolution. Just as the man was stunned, a familiar figure descended from the sky. It was another gargoyle, charging towards him with a sword. The man was speechless. Things shouldn't be this easy, should they? But what was even more embarrassing was his own transformed human form. And then there were no more sharp claws to use to attack. The thrown stones simply couldn't harm him. Moreover, he was becoming easily fatigued. Seeing the scorching flames about to strike, the man knew exactly what the gargoyle would do next. The next second, those sharp claws reappeared. The man, having resumed his true form, smashed his fist into the monster's face. The following barrage of attacks left the monster no room to fight back. Soon, only the head of the quickly smashed monster rolled to the side. Since the level gap disappeared, he could easily handle monsters of this level. Even if several more appeared, he wouldn't feel any pressure. And reality truly fulfilled his wishes. In an instant, 3 more gargoyles charged at him simultaneously. Presumably, from this moment on, he should never recklessly make predictions again. Fortunately, although these monsters possess formidable strength, they generally lack intelligence. The man easily evaded their pursuit with a simple trick. However, these C-class monsters are appearing one after another in the originally safe outer zone, which is enough to prove that the great catastrophe is indeed imminent. If we let this continue, I don't know how much trouble it will cause in the future. Just then, a sound made the man instantly alert. He knew very well that it was the sound of human footsteps. It turned out that this team had also encountered the earthquake and the gargoyles. However, there was disagreement within the team regarding whether to eliminate the threat. Frank, the leader, stated that they should eliminate the problem early, before the disaster becomes uncontrollable. But Gerard didn't want the team to risk it. The cataclysm has complicated the situation in the dungeon. There's no more useful information. Rashly challenging the Lord is too reckless. Frank, of course, didn't like forcing others to just fight. He said playfully, so what? I believe you'll absolutely love that valuable Lord Mage. But he knew in his heart, if the cataclysm worsens, it won't just be towns destroyed. More importantly, countless families will suffer. Shirley's support for the jump is precisely because she has personally experienced such a tragedy. But as adventurers, isn't protecting people and accepting challenges what we should be doing? Frank wanted to try again. But Gerard suddenly had a glint in his eyes. Then, without hesitation, he shot the sword from his hand. Gerard, possessing the Arturius eye, had keenly spotted the man hiding behind the rocks. However, that arrow had missed its target. The warned man knew that, if he didn't reveal himself, he might really get hit. The next second, the man walked out disguised as a human, and stated that he was also an adventurer. He had only hidden because he was worried about encountering bandits. Seeing it was a human, Frank immediately apologized for his teammates' behavior. But Gerard remained wary. He felt a disturbing aura about the man. And this guy seemed overly cautious of those around him. Frank had noticed this too. He was raggedly dressed but without a single scratch. At least he wasn't a simple adventurer. A strange feeling lingered between them. The eerie atmosphere made the man uneasy. If they asked too many questions, he would surely reveal his true nature. What should he do? Continue pretending, or take the initiative? He was abandoned by humanity and became a monster, yet he was still willing to risk his life for them, just because of a vow as a warrior, to protect the people and defend the home. It made him always remember that he also has a human heart. However, when the man first encountered these adventurers in human form, the inevitable suspicion made the atmosphere tense. Later, thanks to the naive Shirley, the deadlock was broken. At that moment, not only was Gerard startled, but even the man was baffled by this seemingly young girl. How could he be so unguarded? However, this gave the man a chance to escape. He immediately looked terrified, frantically running towards the depths of the cave, and Frank thus prevented Gerard from firing his shot. Although the other party, but after all, they didn't cause us any harm. It's just that where will they go from here? Gillard's final opinion, however, surprised Frank. Although she said that rashly challenging the Lord was reckless, she ultimately chose to go into the dungeon with them. Anyway, I'll be providing support from the rear. If the situation turns bad, I'll run away immediately. He stubbornly muttered one last time, perhaps expressing his cautious opposition. But no matter what, they were the strongest team in the Union. If even they couldn't solve it, who else could handle it? Meanwhile, the man tried to convince himself with this line of thinking. Although he didn't agree with these people challenging the Lord without preparation, could he really persuade them? Perhaps it might even come to blows. And worst of all, he couldn't use his monster powers while maintaining his human form. Going might only cause them more trouble, and might even expose his identity. The troubled man kept trying to convince himself he shouldn't go. But deep down, a voice kept arguing against me. Why, when I clearly lack talent, do I still insist on being a warrior? Why do I endure ridicule and scorn, yet refuse to give up? Why are others bravely venturing forth, risking their lives, while I worry about trivial things like exposing my identity? At this moment, the man hesitated no longer. For his initial aspirations and ideals, he resolutely chose to accept this battle. Shortly after parting ways with the man, the three-person team quickly encountered the Lord Gargoyle King, but the monster's power exceeded their expectations. A level 30 monster, its strength far surpassed all of them. Even if Frank swung at his unprotected arm, it wouldn't cause any damage. And after Shirley unleashed a Sword Art Online enhanced attack, the result was only his incredulous expression. The same thing happened to Gerard as well. Although the flying arrow hit its mark with precision, it shattered instantly against the monster's skin. Luckily, they also discovered the monster's weakness. It should be the eye on its belly, but getting past those two swords doesn't seem so easy. Faced with the long sword swinging at him, Frank chose to meet it head-on, creating an opportunity for his teammates. But what he never expected was, the leader actually uses magic skills. As the magic circle beneath his feet lit up, countless flames suddenly surrounded us. The intense heat instantly forced Frank back, and the briefest contact severely burned Frank's arm. Seeing Shirley's dejected expression, Frank knew he had to do something to boost everyone's morale. With a swing of his pure white blade, Frank charged at the Gargoyle King again. Even enduring the burning pain, he had to confront it. Then, with a cross slash that exhausted all his strength, he finally left a crack in the monster's head. Meanwhile, at Frank's command, Gerard's arrow flew. But the result was less than satisfactory. Instead, the injured monster became even more frenzied. The heavy blow sent Frank, already exhausted, crashing to the ground. He fainted. Seeing the danger, Gerard immediately called for Sherry to retreat. But Sherry still wanted to bring Frank back. I can't just let the girl take the front line. Gerard, the archer, reluctantly took Frank's place. But the result was predictable. Another man lay down behind Shelley. He deeply regretted forcing Gerard to join them. He could have safely left. Watching the Gargoyle King's greatsword descend, Shelley, helpless, prepared to meet her death. After a clang of metal, the expected injury didn't come. Until Shirley opened her eyes again, he realized it was him. But due to the monster's true identity, the man in his human form couldn't use his full strength. One slip, and his chest was slashed open. The large amount of spurting blood made Shirley worry for him. Though believing the man to be extraordinary, the near-death Gerard felt this was the extent of his abilities. But in reality, the man pressed on. The pain of his wounds was more like an exhilarating stimulant. Then, with a surprise attack, an arrow precisely struck the monster's eye. The intense pain caused the monster to lose its composure. The man seized the opportunity to retreat from the monster's range. He rapidly regenerated, healing his injuries. The real fight is just beginning. Flames reignite around the monster. The scorching heat of the vortex forces the man to retreat further. But the rocks behind him block his only escape route. The relentless attacks are unavoidable. Is he going to die? Shirley cried out in worried alarm. But the next second, a hand, clawed and strong, seized the falling blade. Following this, the man thrust his sword directly into the monster's eye. A pained shriek echoed through the entire cave. This left Shirley deeply puzzled. Clearly, the monster had hit the man. But why was the monster screaming in agony? It turned out that the surrounding flames and the monster's body had cleverly concealed the man, to the extent that the monster's hand reverting back wasn't noticed by Sherry. However, the scorching flames still caused the man considerable trouble, and the monster's strength exceeded the man's expectations. He didn't expect that with such severe injuries, it still had fighting capacity. But the successive attacks were more like the monster's death throes. Although using regeneration, the man could withstand its flames. The problem was that his magic was almost depleted. But he understood. This guy's also at the end of his rope. The most important thing now is to get out of his flames range, reduce consumption. But this beast seems to have seen through the man's plan. It won't give him that chance. Gilad, seeing this, understands. If this continues, they're all really going to be finished. With serious injuries, he struggles to crawl towards his palace. With his last ounce of strength, he finally loosed the arrow. But perhaps due to exhaustion, the arrow didn't directly hit the monster. But as the rocks fell, they struck the monster's head. This finally gave the man a chance to breathe. In an instant, his sword was firmly plunged into the eye growing on its belly again. The intense pain stopped the monster. The creature stumbled backward. Repeated attacks had smashed the eyeball in its belly beyond recognition. Its painful struggle was clearly visible. This was the man's best chance to deliver the killing blow. But his only weapon lay at the monster's feet. He could only watch helplessly. This perfect opportunity vanished in a flash. Even if he risked revealing the monster's identity, the man was forced to use his claws again. Before his magic completely ran out, he unhesitatingly lunged towards the monster's claws. He accurately grasped its already tattered belly. With a clear cracking sound, the Gargoyle King finally collapsed to the ground. It was no longer responsive, and in the dungeon, only the Spirit Lord can gather the underground magic. With his death, everything here will return to order. Of course, the system rewards for killing monsters are also exceptionally generous. A full 4-level increase. filling the man with hope for future evolution. So much so that he didn't even notice Shelley approaching slowly. "Thank you very much for your rescue. My name is Sherry." A call finally drew the man's attention back. Startled, the man quickly covered the species name on the panel. "What's your name?" Faced with the girl's question, the man had no intention of answering her, because only 2 points of magic were left, and it was almost impossible to sustain her disguise. Then, under Shirley's questioning gaze, the man fled the scene again. The hero who saved humanity ran away in a panic. No one would believe that, no matter who heard it, especially coming from Shirley, who likes to exaggerate. But when Frank pulled out that huge magic stone, everyone realized that it might all be true. But they still wondered why such a powerful adventure was unheard of. Could it really be, as Shirley said, a secretly trained prince? But only Gerard knew that Shirley was embellishing what she saw, because that guy clearly looked pale and weak. Meanwhile, one young girl in the crowd couldn't help but worry. Regardless of whether a hero who single-handedly takes on a level 3 boss truly exists, she only hoped her brother wouldn't get caught up in the fight. Fortunately, the Lord's disappearance at least made the western cave temporarily safe, but her brother didn't think so. The man in the dungeon had been hunting for days. But after the Lord was defeated, there were no more powerful monsters. His stagnant level forced him to consider venturing into a new dungeon. To do so, he needed to enter the human world and gather some information first. But his visible fangs and facial markings made it difficult for him to move freely in a large city. Therefore, smaller, underdeveloped towns became his primary targets. Meanwhile, inside the Layberg Guild in the capital, Frank had already divided the reward into 3 portions, although it was all thanks to that man. But after all, he voluntarily gave it up, and even if he really comes back to claim it later, Frank said he could return part of it then. But at the same time, Frank separated a small bag from his share and gave it to Shelley. Shelley, flattered, immediately refused. But Frank said it was just for travel expenses home. "After all, you haven't been home to visit for a long time. But the only thing is, you must be careful, because they all know that since the great catastrophe, Shirley's hometown has long been in ruins, and the place, which has remained unrebuilt, is now a haven for violence and crime. As for Shirley, she donates all the money she earns each year to the church that raised her. But this is actually meaningless, because it said that this kingdom will be swallowed by the dungeon within this century, compared to the gloom of the city. The people here didn't seem so bad." This was a pleasant surprise to the man. After all, the feeling of being back in the human world was wonderful. He had heard about this place from his companions, back when he was still human. But the rumors of corpses everywhere didn't pan out. Instead, this chaotic little town was perfectly suited to his current state. But soon, the man felt the malice of this place. 3 red crystals fell. These were the gargoyle magic stones he'd collected before leaving. He thought these would allow him to stay here for a while. But he never expected the boss to only give him 500 gore coins. These things could easily fetch 10 times that price in the capital. However, the boss said that was just the way things were here. For someone like him, who looked so weak, yet he has such valuable items, he can exchange them without asking their origin. He doesn't even care about the man's blood-soaked clothes. But if the man tries to escape this place, he'd better watch out. This feeling of being controlled is truly unpleasant. With no choice, the man could only accept the pathetically small amount of coins. But the money in his hand hadn't even warmed up yet, when he ran into a blonde extortionist right outside. Because the man was new in town, he didn't dare act rashly in this unforeseen situation. But the blonde man had sized him up as an outsider. He immediately accused the man of theft, demanding that he hand over the stolen money. The man, realizing what was happening, only then did he understand that the blonde man before him was just a weakling. He waved his hand and easily broke free from the blonde man's grasp. Unexpectedly, the big blonde man fell hard on his butt. So it turned out that this guy was a paper tiger, all bark and no bite. The man could even sense that this guy's strength was at most level 20. At this time, the laughter of the bystanders seemed to confirm this. But Jeff, who always cared about his face, couldn't tolerate such humiliation. He was about to draw his sword and fight the man to the death. Seeing the situation was turning bad, everyone rushed forward to persuade Jeff. And the man, seizing the opportunity, kicked the sword from the blonde man's hand, and immediately fled the scene. Only when he could no longer hear Jeff's furious ranting did the man finally stop, gasping for breath. That night, back in his room, the man racked his brain trying to understand, how could life be any harder than in a dungeon? And the local customs here are so exploitative that a used, cheap knife was all it took to empty the man's remaining few coins. The next day, the man went out early, looking for useful clues. But after a long search, he found nothing. The only certain thing is that everyone here wants to cheat me. Fortunately, at least nobody here knows me. The aggrieved man could only comfort himself this way. But the next second, a familiar figure blocked his path. It was the girl from the dungeon. The man was speechless. He couldn't understand. How could he run into someone who knew him in such a remote town? And he remembered that the girl named Shirley already had level 18 skills. Why would a somewhat famous adventurer come to this city? What if he wants to check his status window? Then it's all over. And he's staring so intently at me, what does it mean? But how would the man know? That love-struck Shirley has already thought of what their children's names will be. She hadn't expected to encounter her savior again so soon. If this isn't fate, what is it? But just as Shelley wanted to thank him for saving her life, the man said he'd mistaken her identity, and ran off. He didn't even give her a chance to explain. Although Frank had said, the man might be a criminal banished from the city, but a person so powerful would be avoided by everyone. Odd fear. Shirley was more inclined to believe that the man must have his reasons. Excuse me, I won't pry into your past. However, Shirley's persistence frightened the man. He must have discovered my monstrous identity. It must be possible the next second. A wall blocked the man's path again. Before the girl arrived, the man decisively transformed his claws, and climbed directly towards the top of the wall, just as he was about to succeed. But right then, the short sword he had just bought slipped from his waist. That's a whole 240 kwai. The heartbroken man, without hesitation, leaped, reaching for the fallen sword, but his kneeling posture completely baffled the arriving Shirley. The clever Shirley could only attribute her idol's embarrassing situation to her own recklessness. She quickly assured him that she wouldn't pry into his privacy. This successfully eased the man's mind, because it means he finally has someone to talk to. By the way, I still haven't gotten an answer. May I know your name? Looking at Shirley, so sincere, but it's just for a name. The man no longer hides it. My name is Chrome Clank. This made the man truly accept this naive girl. And the reason why Shirley, a somewhat accomplished adventurer, came to this city of sin, is because this is her hometown. Once, this place was also a beautiful and kind town, but ever since the nearby dungeon, the great cataclysm broke out. Countless monsters poured into the town, wreaking havoc. All the wealthy and powerful fled the town and cut off contact. And this ruined city became a haven for outlaws. Although they effectively defended against monster invasions, they also enslaved the ordinary residents. The righteous Sherry would never allow her hometown to become a city of sin. Her ambition to rescue Oldfield from the darkness became Sherry's greatest goal. This made the man see her in a new light. He never imagined that the seemingly scatterbrained girl harbored such a grand dream. But right now, I still need to trouble her to guide me. After all, the streets here all look too similar. For a request from her idol, Shirley was naturally happy to help. But the next second, her expression suddenly froze. Because she remembered that everyone had divided up the man's spoils. Shirley felt very sorry about this, and said she could ask the priest to return some of it to the man. It turns out that as soon as Shelley got home, she donated all her income to the church. Because this is where she, an orphan, grew up healthily. And the church, which still supports several orphans to this day, has a major problem with income. This is also why Shelley has always refused to abandon it. Regarding returning the belongings, the man actually had no opinion. But looking at his own empty wallet, in the end, I was defeated by reality. Otherwise, 200 yuan would be acceptable. Next, I should find out the locations of the nearby dungeons. However, a little boy's appearance interrupted their plans. It turned out that right after Sherry left Caramel, two uninvited guests immediately arrived. Looking at the patterns on their clothes, the priest immediately understood that these were thugs from the Evil Dragon Guild. Their purpose was to expand their slave population. They intended to take the orphans from the church. The priest, of course, couldn't let them have their way. With a thud, he knelt on the ground. He pleaded to be taken as a slave in place of the children, but the arrogant Jeff wouldn't agree. He even insulted the old priest, calling him ungrateful. This angered the impetuous Tycoon. He immediately charged forward. He unleashed his newly awakened flame magic at Jeff. However, it was all in vain. Reno, beside him, simply waved a hand and dispersed the weak flames. Let me teach you what real magic is. As he spoke, a clear magic formation appeared in his palm, aimed at the wall. In an instant, a huge hole appeared in the wall. Jeff, standing to one side, was still teasing Reno for making a fuss over nothing. But Tycoon, witnessing everything, was already too scared to stand. He watched as Reno drew closer and closer. In a moment of desperation, the priest could only grab his spear and fight back. Although he knew he was no match for them, he at least bought Tycoon a chance to escape. Hearing all this, Shelley had to bid farewell to Chrome first. What surprised him, however, was, the man actually wanted him to go back with him, even though it sounded like a thorny problem. As his only reliable source of information in this city, he felt it necessary to face this trouble together, and only when the two finally arrived late at the scene, did the man realize that his trip wasn't in vain, because the blackmailer, his big golden retriever, was also among them. Jeff, burning with shame and anger, tried to catch Tycoon as he ran away, but Reno immediately stopped him. Right now, it's more important to let the old man know who's really in charge here. As soon as he finished speaking, Reno slammed the priest's head to the ground with a single palm strike. The commotion attracted the children's attention. The priest immediately urged them to leave quickly. But as Jeff's sword pressed against the priest's neck, the children were all too scared to move. Seeing the stubborn priest still refusing to yield, the lightning in Renault's hand intensified. Let's see how much you care about these little ones. In an instant, powerful lightning surged from behind, mercilessly ravaging the priest's frail body. But even when the flesh was charred to a crisp, the priest still refused to cooperate. An enraged Jeff stepped on his head, giving the priest his final ultimatum. If you don't want to die, tell the children to be obedient. Otherwise, you know we're capable of anything. He finished by disgustingly spitting. It vomited directly onto the priest's head. The priest, of course, knew he couldn't fight these evil forces. His persistence was merely an attempt to give the children one last lesson with his life. That is, in the face of evil and darkness, never back down. For this old man, Jeff really got drenched. Even at death's door, he still had to give a pep talk. Reno, on the other hand, had long since run out of patience. Faced with the priest's ridiculous persistence, he intended to show these commoners firsthand the consequences of defying the evil dragon guild. However, at that moment, the sudden arrival of two people caused Reno to pause his actions. In this town, there were actually people who would meddle in other people's business. This was something Reno had never heard of before, but Jeff quickly recognized the man. And, overconfident as he was the first to scoff at him. Naively, he truly believed the man had run away out of fear. He even wanted to confront the man alone right then and there. The man, of course, recognized the extortionist, but he only tightened his grip on the short sword, remaining silent. He never expected this big blonde to get so cocky. He talks so much nonsense. He even mocks a rusty iron sword. And his trash talk reveals him as a man who's never seen battle. But little does he know, the man before him is a monster who constantly teeters on the brink of death. A casual swing of his sword is enough to leave him struggling to defend himself. Yet he refuses to accept this reality. He immediately gets up and attacks the man again. To his surprise, his opponent's counterattack was incredibly fast. He saw the blade pierce towards his chest. Jeff immediately chose to retreat, but he was still pierced through his armor, injuring his body. The next second, the man's blade was pressed against his forehead again. His body trembled instinctively, forcing Jeff to accept the fact that he was a weakling. I saw murder in the man's eyes. The intense energy fluctuations, however, alerted him. Meanwhile, Reno had already activated a massive magic array. The next second, a burst of thunderous power struck the spot where the man had been standing, just before he dodged. Reno's attacks followed in quick succession. Amidst the violent clashes, neither man gained the upper hand. Only then did Reno understand. It turns out the man wasn't an ordinary person. In his opinion, to fight the evil dragon guild for a dilapidated church, whoever it was a foolish act. After several battles, the man even dared to say that this guy was far stronger than him. At least, he couldn't win in his human form. From what I've seen, you're very strong and courageous. But your weapon is truly terrible. And in a world of the strong preying on the weak are destined to be ruled. Even if we leave today, the outcome will remain unchanged. Out of recognition for your strength, Reno sure tries to persuade the other party. If war truly breaks out, this place will suffer irreparable losses. But if you choose to withdraw, I can stay out of it. This is my final warning, and your last chance. But just because the outcome won't change, should a man give up, then why would he persevere on his path to becoming that impossible adventurer? A man would never choose to yield, even less would he simply leave. But this thoroughly enraged Mo. He never expected to have to fight for his rights in a place like this. You're really asking for it. But the juniors, whom he had no time to attend to at the moment, became an opportunity for the insidious villain. Fortunately, Sherry's timely appearance successfully stopped the shameless Jeff. The young master of the formidable evil dragon guild now finds everyone opposing him. Enraged, Jeff shows no mercy, even though his opponent is a woman. But he soon discovers that even though she's a woman with a lower level than him, he's still struggling. Shirley notices his confusion. It's because Jeff never understands the importance of determination when facing a challenge. Facing such a scoundrel, Shirley held the unwavering belief that she absolutely could not lose. On the other side of the battlefield, Renault, having failed to persuade her, finally got serious. The magic of imbuing his sword with lightning was unlike anything the man had ever seen. Each swing was accompanied by the roar of thunder. The explosive energy was simply beyond his current capabilities to withstand. Even the sword in his hand, I'd be instantly destroyed. But what can I do? Faced with Reno's stronger and wider range attacks, I can't even get close to him. Should I drop the disguise? But how could I dare reveal my true self in front of these children and Sherry? Not to mention that it would expose my identity, and it might scare Sherry. It's very likely to backfire. Is there really no other way? Meanwhile, the light in Renault's hand intensified again. He actually used two spells simultaneously, but before the man could be too shocked, a purple thunderbolt struck him. Most of the skin on his arm was burned as a result. However, this was only the beginning. Although the man reacted immediately, he was still approached by Reno by several body lengths. The next second, countless bolts of lightning gathered again on his blade. The man, who wanted to parry with his sword, was already too late. Amidst the crisp sound of breaking, Lei Jian easily pierced the defenses. It went straight into the man's kidney. Although it avoided a vital point, the powerful thunder force still caused a burning smell to constantly emanate from the wound. However, Reno quickly noticed something was wrong, because his sword was firmly stuck, and he couldn't pull it out. Moreover, the blood from the wound was quickly clotting. And what's with his skin color? Reno couldn't figure it all out. The man's sudden surge of power chilled him to the bone. Then, with a single punch, Reno instantly lost consciousness. It turned out the man had deliberately let Reno stab him. Before that, he had already reverted his skin to its monstrous state. Then, by activating regeneration, he instantly healed the sword wounds. This left Reno no time to react to this bizarre series of events. At such a critical moment, he could still remain this calm and make such a judgment. Although I don't know exactly what happened. The priest's expression was enough to show his shock. Of course, another one who was incredibly disbelieving was that show-off Jeff. But at this moment, he looked at the two blades pointed at him. The smug look had vanished from his face. But whatever the case, they were still the most powerful guild here. Naturally, they had plenty of ways to escape and save their lives. A cloud of poison smoke instantly obscured everyone's vision. With the sound of shattering glass, Jeff had already placed one foot on the windowsill. But before he left, he didn't forget to issue a harsh warning. Opposing the evil dragon guild will have dire consequences. You will all pay for your actions today. Finally, we've gotten rid of those annoying guys. Shirley breathed a sigh of relief. But the man beside her fell into deep thought at that moment. Just chasing them away doesn't truly solve the problem. Shirley knew deep down that the evil dragon guild would definitely return. The suggestion of moving everyone to the capital also seems unrealistic. Because of the long journey, getting the children there safely isn't a simple matter. What's more, the high cost of living and taxes are beyond their means. The harsh realities leave Shelley feeling helpless. The understanding priest, however, says, they will take good care of themselves. But the more urgent matter now is, that Shelley and her companion must leave here as quickly as possible. He's the type who can't stand being wronged. After suffering a loss, he'll definitely come back for revenge. And you two will absolutely be their primary targets. On the way back, Shirley thanked the man again for saving her. But she wondered what to do next. He found himself at a loss. Looking at the girl's confused expression, the man swallowed the words he was about to say. He planned to return to the hotel and rest for the day. He had no plans for tomorrow. He subconsciously wanted to ask about Shelley's plans, but suddenly realized it wasn't a good time to ask. Because he believed that as long as Shelley remained here, he would definitely intervene in the church's affairs. But the reality of being hunted made him reluctant to involve the church in the disaster. In this difficult situation, he must have found it hard to decide. Then the man changed his approach. Shirley, could you tell me about the dungeon and the details of Oddfield's decline? Initially, when the dungeon appeared, the country sent troops to suppress it. But that 20-man team was completely annihilated. The unknown dangers meant the capital was unwilling to waste any more resources there. And since then, this place has been abandoned by the country. What kind of power could leave the country helpless? A moment of confusion, however, gave the man a new idea. Because he had been worrying about not having a powerful monster to help him level up quickly. But a dungeon of this level should be enough for him to stay in for a while. As for the rampant criminal organizations like the Evil Dragon Guild, with the threat of the dungeon gone, won't the kingdom try to reclaim this place? Meanwhile, in a dark room, Jeff was kneeling on the ground, trembling. Before him was the leader of the Evil Dragon Guild, Lord Sharod. Known for his brutality and strength, Garrod held supreme power here. He even liked being called the Monster of Oddfell. Only today, he was especially angry about Jeff's desertion and losing to a small fry. It was simply a defilement of the Evil Dragon Guild's reputation. If it weren't for something more important, he guaranteed he would kill Jeff. Canera. Why reduce the number of Emperor's guards? If not controlled, that place will be very troublesome. Do you know? Canera, a high-ranking member of the labor union, had a serious expression. She showed no fear of the monster before her. That's because a more urgent situation has arisen. It turns out that the remnants of the defeated army have begun appearing in the town, and it's estimated that many more are lurking in the shadows. North of the town, a figure climbed onto a rooftop. The disaster hole didn't seem hard to find. A giant entrance was situated in a barren wasteland. The rested man was ready to enter at any moment. But the residents who had left their homes so early before dawn caught his attention. It turned out that, at some point, a monster had invaded the town. The fireballs it recklessly threw destroyed the town's houses mercilessly. The unarmed residents could only flee in terror. The man rushing forward finally understood that the Evil Dragon Guild wasn't protecting the town at all. He watched as the monster's fireball was about to strike the panicked villagers. A holy light soared into the air, directly blocking the incoming fireball. Then, a woman cloaked in a robe stepped out from the crowd. At the same time, The man's attack also arrived. One arrow severely wounded the monster from the catastrophe cave. This was unexpected for the woman. When did this town get such a powerful adventurer? And strangely, why did her sword react to that person? Just as the man was about to head to the catastrophe cave, the appearance of a one-eyed beast shattered the town's tranquility. Even the eager man immediately attacked the monster, although the unexpected blow directly wounded his body. When he tried to press his advantage, the monster easily blocked him. Until the woman beside him chanted a spell, a holy light immediately climbed onto the long sword. The man quickly recognized that it was similar magic to Reno's. The only difference is that the holy attribute would have a better effect against evil forces. The next second, the woman casually waved her hand. The monster before her was instantly split in two. Everyone cheered loudly at her astonishing ability. However, the woman was now filled with deep doubt. Because a slight attraction exists between sacred power and evil magic. But the magic in her sword had just reacted to the man beside her. This left her utterly perplexed. This man, although he helped kill the monster, but the presence of a high-level adventurer here is also suspicious. And he always believed that divine power wouldn't react to an ordinary person. But just as the woman was about to investigate, the enthusiastic villagers suddenly stood behind the man. Thank you so much. Without you, the whole village would have been burned to the ground. More and more villagers surrounded him. But the man didn't feel happy about it. Because being exposed to so many people was dangerous for him. However, the girls' thank you, a simple thank you to the great hero, gave the man a feeling of glory he'd never experienced before. But this beautiful moment was fleeting. A woman's cry instantly pulled him back to reality. The eyeless monster wasn't dead after all. He formed another fireball in his hand. The woman then realized her oversight. Because there had been no death notification sound just now. The next second, a holy shield shone again. This time, after blocking the fireball, the woman intended to violently stab the monster in its eyes. Unfortunately, the monster's target wasn't them. But it was the little girl, unguarded, standing nearby. In a flash, they saw the exploding fireball hurtling towards the girl, but the woman's shield couldn't redirect in time. Everyone's hearts leaped into their throats. The next second, the light from the fireball's explosion instantly swallowed everyone's vision. Immediately after, a green light flashed again. The monster was completely split in two. Its hatred spread to the northwest. But the girl remained unharmed, standing there. However, the people's expressions turned fearful once more. Because a larger, stronger monster appeared. It turned out that just before the fireball was about to touch the girl, a monster's claw blocked it. And that was the man, finally revealing his true form. Even if revealing his identity meant he could never see that girl again, even if it meant being utterly devastated, he would still give it all up to protect her. Because that's the real reason he wanted to be an adventurer. Though he didn't regret his choice, reality still made him pay the price for his actions. At that moment, even the concerned gaze of the great hero became the disgusting stare of a monster. The comrades who had fought side by side just moments ago now became enemies locked in a fight to the death. For a moment, everyone raised their weapons, pointing them at the man. Some even grumbled about why the evil dragon guild wasn't there at this moment. But the man wasn't surprised. He understood the villagers. Besides, he wasn't doing it for any reward. He could always run away. It's what he's always done anyway. Meanwhile, a pebble grazed the man's cheek. Countless indignant villagers seemed to become heroes who drove away the monster at that moment. And with this change in identity, no matter how much effort he had made before, it all vanished into thin air at this moment. All people saw were the ugly monster and the hateful enemy, one who tried to learn, and the monster that has integrated into human society. This chills the woman to the bone. It seems imperative to kill it before it escapes. However, the girl's call makes the woman stop what she's doing. Although the woman explains that it's a monster that supports humans, and even her father emphasizes that it's a terrifying monster, the girl just doesn't understand. She doesn't understand why her father and everyone else wants to drive away a hero who protects the city. Even if he looks a little strange, he hasn't harmed anyone. The father, wanting to retort, could only say it was a coincidence, and seemed to find no better response for his daughter. The girl, still defending the man, was emotionally overwhelmed, weeping and speaking passionately. And did you see how he looked at me just now? He was clearly checking if I was alright. For a moment, all the villagers stopped their pursuit. There were only heads hanging low in shame. Didn't I tell you to keep a low profile? Back at the base, the woman was being reprimanded by the captain. The woman's name was Mila. She was a member of the kingdom's army, here on a secret mission. To avoid arousing the suspicion of the evil dragon guild, they were all ordered not to approach the dungeon entrance. Mila's unauthorized actions could have serious consequences for the mission. While I understand that kind-hearted Mila is considering the safety of the people, Aelant has to emphasize the importance of this mission again. And the monster Mila speaks of is merely a rather special individual. Even if he killed hundreds of people, so what? Compared to the mission, even investigating the evil dragon guild is insignificant. Because this time, they are looking for the red-robed man connected to the monster disaster. Meanwhile, on the other side, the man finally escaped to the dungeon entrance. His exposed identity left him without even his meager refuge, but for this town and its people, his resolve to cleanse the catastrophe hole remained unstoppable. The man vowed to complete his evolution this time. Then, he would acquire new skills and return to Oddfell. Scene change. Shirley, who had been hesitant, finally left the priest. He knew that under the rule of the evil dragon guild, monster appearances were becoming increasingly severe. He couldn't wait for the day he would become strong enough. He couldn't guarantee what the children would face tomorrow. If neither the kingdom nor the evil dragon guild were willing to protect them, no matter how reckless his decision was, he would have to solve the disaster hole himself. Save this town. Facing the dungeon where the royal squad was once completely wiped out. Even if I only advance a little each day, I must ensure I have enough rest. But the only advantage here is that I can use monster appearances without any scruples. The terrain here is complex, so I'll have to take many detours before I find the Lord. And the man was indeed quickly stumped by the fork in the road before him. I pondered for a while but couldn't think of a good solution. If so, I can only rely on the sword in my hand. That's the sword I snatched from Reno last time. It is indeed much better than my own second-hand knife. Guided by fate, the man quickly found an answer. However, fate seemed more like playing a little joke on him. I hadn't even taken 2 steps, when my ankle was entangled by something strange. The man even fell flat on his face. He couldn't understand how there could be spider silk here, but on second thought, he dismissed his own idea. Because if it were spider silk, how big would the spider have to be? But just as the man stood up, 2 giant demonic spiders descended from the sky. Encountering monsters so soon was unexpected. He didn't have time to think much. A huge magic array had already formed. Trying to escape, he found that the spider's silk on his feet was impossible to break free from. The next second, countless stones rained down from the magic array. But the man became a living target, completely stationary. Fortunately, these 2 weren't too high level, and the damage was still bearable. However, just as the man drew his sword to cut the silk, the magic spider, having reacted, instantly spat out another stream of silk. This time, it precisely bound the man's right hand. Sensing danger, the man was just about to act, when his other hand was immediately bound as well. In this way, the man completely became the prey of the 2 monsters, and the 2 triumphant demonic spiders seemed to let out a series of clicking laughter. But did they think they could really bind the man like this? Since the spider's silk firmly binds his hands, it means that you 2 are also firmly in my grasp. In an instant, the roles of hunter and hunted reversed. The spider's silk originally used to control the man, now became an obstacle restraining themselves. The 2 small monsters were quickly dazed by the man's attacks. They lost their fighting ability. While waiting for them to regain consciousness, all they faced was the man's merciless claws. With a flash of green light, 2 experience points were successfully obtained. The man took this opportunity to successfully level up to 26. But this place is truly extraordinary. Although it's only a level 23 monster, it's quite rare to find one this close to the surface. It seems the leveling speed here will be faster than I expected. And after several level crossing challenges, the man isn't worried about encountering monsters higher than his level. Of course, it would be even better if they were only slightly higher. Suddenly, something strange deep in the cave sent a chill down his spine. Then, several pairs of green lights emerged from the darkness. It's actually a level 36 giant spider. The difference is too big. He really hates his own bad luck. It's just as he said. The next second, a brutal charge slammed right into him. That terrifying speed was completely disproportionate to its bulky body. He knew he was no match for this thing. The best thing to do right now is to get out of here. He didn't believe that this level of monster was everywhere. As long as he could temporarily shake it off, he would be safe. And the narrow cave before him was his chance. Seeing the giant spider about to pounce on him, the man leaped. He dove straight into the cave. Such a small place. You can't possibly follow me in here, you big thing. But he hadn't been happy for a few seconds. The man was immediately stunned by the sight before him. What the hell is this? He saw countless more spiderwebs before him. Only then did the man realize he'd been tricked. He was deliberately lured here. Since there's no way to retreat, I can only fight head-on. What's more, I was originally counting on these powerful monsters to help me evolve quickly. And if I can't even defeat monsters of this level, how can I possibly conquer this disaster's hole? I thought the narrow entrance would effectively block the magic beads. But who would have thought? It was waiting for its chance there. Suddenly, the monster charged wildly, smashing the rocks at the cave entrance to pieces. Immediately after, its sharp claws rose high, aiming to kill the man in one blow. But perhaps constrained by its massive size, although fast, its accuracy was somewhat off. This, however, gave the man a chance to counterattack. The man, using the pig's leg that he couldn't retract in time, seized the opportunity, and leaped into the air. Immediately following, a sweeping blow accurately hit the demon spider's head. In the cramped space, his agility was naturally somewhat lacking, but this became an advantage he could exploit in close-quarters combat. But just then, A rainbow-like glow began to coalesce in the mouth of the magic spider. The next second, a red beam shot straight at the man. Its sudden increase in speed almost prevented him from dodging it. The man understood that this must be some kind of skill it possessed. But for now, he could only hide behind the rock, to temporarily avoid its sharp edge. But surprisingly, the red beams, arriving one after another, grazed the man's scalp, splitting the stone in two. The terrifying power gave the man a fright. If he'd been hit, he would have died instantly. The man understood. He couldn't keep hiding. He had to find a way to get closer. A swift victory was his only chance. But the observant man quickly made a discovery. That is, before the magic spider fired its red line, there was always a tell. So, as long as he continuously attacked it, he could avoid its laser. However, before the man could congratulate himself on his cleverness, in an instant, countless spiderwebs attacked again. I'm going to be trapped. Then I'll truly just become a torch. To think that as a monster, it possesses such combat awareness. The man marveled, but also realized he had been driven into a desperate situation. What to do? My large body will surely be hit easily. I wish I were smaller. Yeah, smaller. The man was suddenly enlightened. How could I forget such an important thing? Meanwhile, a large amount of spiderwebs gushed out again, but the man advanced instead of retreating. He saw her instantly transform into a human form. Using its small size, it successfully avoided the spiderweb's encirclement. Immediately leaping up, it aimed downwards, and fiercely plunged into the demon spider's eyeball. Intense pain stimulated every nerve in the demon spider, but the man's movements were far from over. The withdrawn sword was once again pointed at its other eyes, a threat to its life. Finally, the magic bead moved. An arm and elbow, at a bizarre angle, pierced towards the man. Although he successfully blocked the attack with his fitness training, the immense impact still sent him tumbling down. The man then realized, he had been too hasty. He had only attacked, and completely forgotten to defend himself. At the same time, two strands of spider silk suddenly stretched out from the smoke. The man immediately felt a chill down his spine. The speed was so fast, it was almost impossible to react in time. Caught off guard, one of the strands wrapped around his left hand. The strength of the silk was so tough that even his longsword couldn't cut through it. Then, the magic bead at the other end of the spider silk was pulled hard. The man was lifted into the air. He plummeted towards the monster's gaping maw. Was this truly the end? He was so unwilling to accept it. But indeed, he didn't have much time left. The next second, he gripped his sword. Without hesitation, he severed his entire left arm. Just a moment. The hand, entangled in spider silk, was dragged into the monster's mouth. But strangely, the man didn't show any relief at having survived. Instead, he looked as if a cunning plan had succeeded. Suddenly, 5 sharp claws pierced directly through the giant spider's head, and the man's long sword followed closely behind. Again, it plunged into the giant spider's head. Perhaps he'll never understand until his dying day, just what kind of being is a monster warrior. Looking at the severed arm in his hand, he still feels a chill of fear when he thinks back on it. He couldn't believe that he had actually managed to defeat a higher-level opponent. He had killed a level 37 black magic pearl. But thankfully, the rewards were more than worth it. A full 7-level increase brought him a significant step closer to his next evolution. But this battle left him completely drained. Regeneration therapy further depleted his last reserves of magic. The man had no choice but to rest for a while, before considering the next challenge. But ironically, he found himself increasingly adapting to life in the dungeon. At least here, he didn't have to worry about anyone discovering his secret. Soon, the man set off on a new journey once again. But the complex terrain kept bringing him back to the starting point over and over. Although the monsters along the way had helped him grow stronger, at this rate, he had no idea when he would ever find the Lord. However, just as the man was eating a spider to recover his strength, the sound of footsteps caught his attention. His experience told him, these are definitely not the footsteps of a monster. But who would come to such a dangerous place alone? To be safe, the man immediately activated his camouflage. Meanwhile, the footsteps nearby cautiously stopped. The mage, holding his staff, remained vigilant against the creature before him. But just as he was about to throw his spell, the two, finally seeing each other clearly, suddenly froze. Shirley's appearance truly took the man by surprise. He couldn't understand how, with his abilities, she had managed to get here. Until Shirley pulled out a map of the disaster hole, he realized how unprepared he was. He didn't even know such a thing existed. The map, detailing routes and monster information, would undoubtedly bring immense convenience. But even so, this isn't a place for a warrior of Shelley's caliber. And the man quickly guessed why she was here. Leave the map with me. Go back according to my instructions. The sudden order made Shelley feel an unprecedented coldness. But the man's expression couldn't be faked. Shelley knew, it was a sternness born of worry for her. It's pitiful that someone completely unrelated to this place can challenge the catastrophes whole alone. What reason do I have to back down? I'm sorry, but I won't go back. This place, which destroyed the kingdom's knights, isn't something you can handle alone. You'll only be in the way here. The man tried to dissuade her with words, but he didn't expect Shirley's determination to be so strong. She even took back the money she had donated to the church, to buy licorice seeds to counter the magic beads, and sapphires to subdue the vampires. Compared to Sherry's thorough preparations, he realized he had been rather reckless in coming here, and it was clear that Sherry's resolve was unyielding. Considering her information was very helpful for clearing the dungeon, and his current disguise could last for 9 hours, he finally agreed to Sherry's request. Meanwhile, inside the Evil Dragon Guild, Canella reports the series of events that have occurred in the town these past few days, but to his surprise, compared to the Kingdom Army's disguised invasion, the act of an insignificant adventurer intruding into the disaster's cave has angered the formidable Lord Garrod. Once the city resumes its original function, they will completely lose control here. So even if there's only a 1/10,000 chance, Garrod would absolutely never allow such a thing to exist. Meanwhile, the two who had just decided to travel together quickly ran into trouble. 3 six-eyed magic orbs attacked them. Dealing with these monsters, at the same time, they also had to keep an eye on Sherry. It really puts a lot of pressure on men, but the next second, Shirley brushed her hand away, and ran straight out. Immediately after, a black cloth bag flew straight at the spider, just as it was about to touch it. Countless tiny particles shot out from the broken bag. Amazingly, the spider's eyes instantly dimmed. Its attack faltered immediately. It crashed straight into the rock. The man was shocked. The monster before him seemed to have truly become blind, like a bat. He seized the opportunity and swung his sword, directly severing 4 of the spider's legs. The man was somewhat incredulous. He didn't expect Shirley's strategy to be so effective. Originally, he could only barely win against one with a lot of effort. Now he easily took down 3 six-eyed magic orbs. And more importantly, the maze that had him wandering around for a whole day, now he instantly found the right direction. Of course, he understood that it was all thanks to the efforts of those who came before. They used their lives to create this detailed strategy. This picture holds all of Shirley's hopes for her hometown, her trust and approval. The man is willing to fight for this small town. A sudden resolve. It left Shirley completely captivated, because she clearly remembered him saying he was here for a promotion. Now, Shirley's eyes held a sentiment she herself hadn't even noticed. However, danger approached again. A claw suddenly emerged from the darkness, slashing directly at the man's chest. Although he reacted in time and blocked with his sword, the unexpected force sent the man crashing hard against the wall. It was a level 42 boar queen. This is probably second only to a lord-level creature, and the truth was quickly confirmed by Sherry. The boar queen possesses powerful ranged attacks. The best way to deal with him is to get as close as possible, especially since he has a huge blind spot to his right. Under Shirley's guidance, her powerful execution was perfectly demonstrated. A single chop directly severed Ju Ho's right torso. However, the attack was far from over. The red crystal in her hand flew out. The magic stone, imbued with fire energy, instantly engulfed the monster's body. The intense flames quickly climbed her body, spreading along her hair. Meanwhile, a fleeting, inexperienced swordlight flashed past again. The battle ended before he even had a chance to breathe. The man couldn't believe this cross-level challenge had been so easy. And without realizing it, he was only 10 levels away from his next evolution. Although he might not achieve it before meeting the Lord, undeniably, his current rate of improvement is astonishing. From a skeleton, I've gradually become this flesh and blood form. I should be closer to being human now. The man silently hoped. But now isn't the time to think about that. Having regained his composure, the man asked Shirley about the Lord's location. And it was said that it was a titan magate with immense power. Countless knights and adventurers had fallen at its hands. Of course, it wasn't invincible. He has a fatal weakness. That will be the key to their victory. However, a worry crept into the man's heart at this moment. He just hoped to finish the battle before the deadline, and that would be a blessing. The man had considered facing the monster alone. After all, he was the one who had destroyed countless knights and adventurers. But he had to admit, with Shelley's information, his chances of winning are indeed much higher. But the man still wants to double-check. Are you sure you don't want to go back? Of course. I've made very thorough preparations for the monster. Although I know my strength isn't enough to fight the monster, I can still occasionally distract it. Seeing that Sherry has made up her mind, the man didn't try to dissuade her. But what she didn't know was, Shirley was prepared to sacrifice herself at any moment. Meanwhile, the surroundings began to tremble subtly. A tall figure gradually emerged from the darkness. It's finally here. The Titan Ape. The enormous disparity in power forced the man to be on high alert. Those terrifying claws were enough to send chills down his spine, for the Titan Ape possessed incredible speed. Its metal-like claws became its deadly weapon for harvesting prey. Of course, even the strongest monster has its weaknesses. Because its feet are much smaller than its body, its speed is only advantageous in a straight line. So as long as we move in a zigzag pattern, we can effectively dodge his attacks. But is that really the case? Only when you truly face the demon ape, can you truly feel the terror of this monster. Its speed is ridiculously fast. Even using the zigzag running method, it still closes the distance quickly. The icy claws pressed closer and closer. At the critical moment, the man dodged. Once again, the attack missed. But the man knew. He could only dodge for a while, not forever. As long as he was hit once, he might directly lose his fighting ability. But can he just keep avoiding it like this? Until the demon ape closed the distance again. Its huge shoulder and palm slammed towards the man again. But this time, it was blocked by the tightly closed stone, and this would become the man's chance to fight back. The demon ape's source of power is also its greatest weakness. It was his ridiculously disproportionate little feet, but even this opportunity didn't yield much effect. I originally intended to use this to reduce his movement speed, but the results were negligible. The men were astonished. This was unbelievable. However, at that moment, another long sword pierced the air. It hit the demon ape squarely in the back. It was a surprise attack from Sherry, but the result was still astonishing. The tip of the blade didn't penetrate at all. Its tough body was as strong as metal, but the demon ape was completely enraged. With a swing of its arm, it sent them both flying. Sherry looked at the man worriedly. Fortunately, it was only a scrape. Regeneration would easily repair the injury, but because of this, the man's magic began to rapidly decrease. He couldn't use his skills recklessly. Otherwise, he would prematurely break his disguise. The situation was becoming increasingly critical. Now, he couldn't even secretly revert to his original form like last time. After all, they were too close this time. And once Shirley discovers his true identity, he's worried she might panic. But if they don't defeat the demon ape soon, they might not even have a chance to survive. He's the great hero in the girl's eyes, but he never dares to show his true face, because when heaven resurrected him, they also played a cruel joke on him, turning this gifted but passionate lone hero into a monster reviled by all. Even though he risked his life to save the human child, he was still cursed and beaten by the villagers. But even so, he still chose to save this failing town, heading towards the disaster cave, and eliminate the monsters in the cholera town. However, the Titan ape's power exceeded his expectations, even with Shirley's help. It was still difficult to inflict effective damage on it, seeing his magic was about to run out, and his disguise was about to be broken. To avoid revealing his identity to Shirley, Chrome had to end the battle quickly. Right now, the first thing to do is to redirect the demonic ape's attention. Because Sherry's physical strength is quite limited, she obviously wouldn't be able to dodge any of the demonic ape's attacks. So Chrome decisively picked up a stone from the ground, and threw it at the back of its head. However, perhaps the demonic ape was too thick-skinned. It didn't even react. In that case, don't blame me for being impolite. He raised his long sword high. Chrome precisely hit the snake-headed, long-tailed creature behind the demonic ape. The intense pain caused the demonic ape to roar wildly, turning around at the same time. A burst of explosive claws followed. Unfortunately, Chrome had anticipated this. He easily dodged the attack. Although attacking its tail didn't inflict fatal damage, it did get its attention. But that was enough. Next, he continued his zigzag running, to evade its fury. Clearly, Chrome was gradually adapting to the demon ape's attack rhythm. He managed to dodge its claws perfectly each time. However, the demon ape became even more enraged. He no longer wanted to be toyed with by these flies. So he opened his mouth wide, preparing to unleash his deadliest attack, the devil's breath. Chrome immediately saw through his intentions. It was clear that he was truly angered by himself. This is a fast-acting neurotoxin that quickly drains one's ability to act. Although its effects don't last long, it can rapidly cover the surrounding area in a short time. However, Chrome doesn't intend to stop it, because this skill has a fatal flaw. It said that. Seizing the opportunity, Shirley immediately pulled out a small pouch she prepared, and threw it accurately at the demon ape's head. The demonic ape was startled by the sudden object, but instinctive habit made him slash open the bag before him without hesitation. In an instant, countless dust particles filled the air. Chrome and Shirley immediately covered their noses and mouths. The unprepared demonic ape, as expected, was choked and coughed repeatedly. It was the powder of a poisonous mushroom. Such a large quantity, even a behemoth like the Titan demonic ape couldn't withstand it. Soon, even his eyes were too blinded to open. The chance for humanity finally arrived. But Shelley loudly scolded the man, because before that, he still had to throw this magic stone. Although the demon ape's tail has no eyes, it can accurately locate its prey using the heat emitted by living beings. So, all that's needed is a magic stone that emits heat. It could fool his tail, making it indistinguishable from the real thing. Sure enough, the magic ape treated the magic stone as a living creature, and without hesitation launched an attack on the target. However, this wrong judgment completely exposed its weakness. The real opportunity finally arrived. Shirley took the lead in counterattacking. It's a pity that, perhaps their weapons were a little lacking. Shirley's power is just too weak. The wound on her thigh hasn't changed noticeably. Chrome made a quick decision. He materialized his monstrous teeth. After all, compared to claws, teeth have a much lower chance of being exposed, and the effect was indeed quite remarkable. He tore off a whole chunk of muscle. The unprecedented pain caused the demonic ape to let out a violent shriek. Its body convulsed uncontrollably from the pain. It collapsed to the ground. Thus, the demonic ape's most powerful weapon was stripped away. The situation had completely reversed. Crom and Shirley continued to inflict more wounds on the demonic ape. As long as they kept attacking, even the strongest fortress wouldn't last long. However, just as everything was heading in a good direction, Crom discovered a startling fact. That is, this demonic ape also possessed regenerative abilities. He watched as the torn leg was about to fully regenerate. A strong sense of crisis surged through him once more. After all, if they failed, it would mean the same tragedy would replay in Fear. That was something Crom would absolutely not allow. After all, even as a monster, he desperately wanted to be an adventurer, all to prevent this kind of disaster. He leaped straight at the monster's head, swinging his weapon. The threat to his life completely unleashed the demon ape's potential. A powerful Vajra fist landed squarely on the man's chest. Unexpectedly, the dying demon ape could still unleash such power. This made Shirley worry about the man. However, Crom simply adjusted his breath and immediately counterattacked, because he knew he couldn't delay any longer. Of course, the Titan ape didn't have much time left either. The human's long sword attacked again, but this time, the Titan ape missed, because Crom's target wasn't its head this time, but the Titan ape's heart. Clearly, the sunlight this time was effective. Blood gushed continuously from his chest. The Titan ape finally lost its life. A massive amount of experience poured into him. Crom's level directly reached 47. This meant he was one step closer to his next evolution. But more importantly, the catastrophe hole, that big problem, was truly solved by them. However, before they could properly enjoy their victory, unexpected and unwelcome visitors arrived one after another. Just after Crom successfully killed the Titan ape, Shirley's tightly strung nerves finally relaxed. Tears welled up in his eyes. His inner excitement could not be calmed for a long time. However, Crom was terrified. He thought Shirley had accidentally been injured or something, but actually, he's perfectly fine. It's just that thinking about the children and the priest finally being freed, I couldn't help but cry. And that's not wrong, really. After all, it was because of the calamity that the kingdom abandoned Fear. Now that the dungeon's been cleared, they just need to send a Knight Legion to expel the evil dragon guild. I believe Fear will soon return to its former prosperity. The prospect of a bright future relaxed Crom. He subconsciously used regeneration to heal his wounds, but he regretted it the moment he did it. After all, he didn't have much magic left. If he revealed his true form at this moment, it would all be for nothing. Crom immediately opened a window to investigate. Fortunately, the consecutive upgrades had replenished his magic, and when he saw again that he was only 3 levels away from his next evolution, he couldn't help but feel a surge of secret delight, because it meant he was one step closer to becoming human again. However, that rarely seen look of elation left Shelley dumbfounded. Although she had benefited from her idol's success, her level had also jumped 9 levels to 28. Getting out of the cave was still a long way off. After all, even if the Lord was killed, but there are still many other monsters in the cave, so before that, they must prepare thoroughly. This is actually what Crom wanted to say, because his magic is also running low. However, at this moment, a hand suddenly reached out from the darkness. A fireball flew straight towards the man. If it weren't for Sherry noticing something was wrong first, and bravely stepping in to block it, Crom might have really been beaten back to his original form. Crom, enraged by Sherry's actions, was filled with disbelief. He couldn't understand why the people from the Evil Dragon Guild were here. And that guy's physique, it looked so terrifying. Is he even human? What Crom noticed was Garode, the boss of the Evil Dragon Guild. For a small adventurer to make it this far, Garode was quite surprised, actually. However, some turncoats weren't satisfied. Jeff glared angrily at his former nemesis. Despite being humiliated many times, he still brazenly claimed he would teach Crom a lesson. Crom ignored him. Instead, Shirley was the first to speak. This means they've successfully killed the demon ape. The reign of the Evil Dragon Guild will soon be over. So why don't you dare flee before the knights arrive? Shirley intended to scare them away, but clearly she underestimated these bastards' courage. Shirley's bluff was useless against them. Instead, it provoked their mockery. You wouldn't think we're really incapable of defeating the demon ape, would you? That level of monster. As long as our boss makes a move, he alone can easily take care of that dead monkey. Impossible. Sherry retorted angrily. After all, this was achieved with the countless efforts of so many people. However, this is an undeniable fact, because from the beginning, the news of the Discrimination Guild being wiped out by monsters was false. The people of the Evil Dragon Guild know everything about the catastrophe hole, so they spread a fake map. Then hid in the catastrophe hole ahead of time, and waited for an opportunity to murder the knights who came to support them, so they never intended to escape from Fear. After all, as long as no one knows the catastrophe hole has been cleared, Everything will continue as usual. The evil dragon will continue to rule this land. Because they only need to release a few monsters occasionally, letting them slaughter in the town. At worst, they can create some mutilated corpses themselves. Endless fear will still make the villagers rely on them. Shirley listened, her face full of despair. She couldn't believe that all her hard work had only resulted in a pile of useless lies. The bastards before her slowly walked towards them. From Garrett's mouth, Shirley was terrified to hear the word rape. The situation became increasingly critical. The burden fell on Chrome again. The danger emanating from Garrett gave him reason to believe what they said was true. Shirley was now crying uncontrollably. Her heart was filled with apologies to her idol. After all, she had taken advantage of his kindness. It was I who dragged her into this senseless danger. The threat to her life caused Chrome's tightly clenched fists to tremble uncontrollably. She understood that Sherry was now combat ineffective. But she certainly wouldn't blame Sherry. After all, she was severely injured while taking a bullet for her. But leaving him to face so many people alone, he truly had no confidence. Could he only give up? That's absolutely impossible. After all, when he first learned his skill was trash, he didn't give up. He still resolutely walked the path of an adventurer. Even when he became a pile of bones, he suffered countless hardships pursuing a human appearance. Even if the final result only lasted a few hours, didn't he still persevere? Compared to everything before, now it's just a fight with a few bastards. What is there to be afraid of? After all, I've already died once. What reason does he have to give up? Having completed his mental preparation, Chrome resolutely stood in front of Sherry. But in the eyes of the evil dragon guild, he was just making a futile struggle. One of the swordsmen charged without a word. His skill was clearly superior to Jeff's. Chrome was slightly careless, and his chest was slashed open. Seeing the completely one-sided battle, that shameless Jeff jumped in again to steal the spotlight, spouting all sorts of trash talk, even using the children in the church to constantly provoke them. Shirley had completely lost her fighting spirit in despair, but Chrome couldn't fall. He had to stand up and confront these bastards. His sword swung out again. But this time, Jeff, who appeared out of nowhere, intercepted him. Meanwhile, his two teammates seized the opportunity to attack. For swordsman precisely hit Chrome's body. For an ordinary person, such injuries should be fatal, but Chrome stood up again. This added a bit of thrill to Jeff's perversion. After all, he still planned to capture the man alive to feed to the dogs. Let's start with your left arm, then. Saying this, he swung a long sword directly towards Chrome's left shoulder. But this time, a piercing alarm blared through the air. Jeff was speechless at the sight before him. For what he saw blocking him was a monster's claw. And the owner of that hand was the family he despised from the bottom of his heart. At first, only a left hand was revealed, but that alone was enough to send the fool Jeff sprawling. The sudden appearance, of course, also attracted Shirley's attention. He knew that Chrome possessed recovery skills, but he had never heard of him having such astonishing power, and that strangely shaped arm always gave him a bad feeling. However, Garrod, who witnessed all this, didn't think much of it. On the contrary, he was intensely interested in the man before him. Chrome's heart was filled with mixed emotions at this moment. The reason he didn't want Shirley to see his true face was because he knew his glorious image in Shirley's heart. But wasn't he the same? If it weren't for Sherry's boundless trust back then, he wouldn't have had the courage to leave that dark dungeon. Although their first meeting in Aldebaran was still so awkward, compared to the fear in his heart, Sherry's relentless pursuit brought him more gratitude. So what he'd been worried about was just Sherry getting angry at him for deceiving her. But faced with life or death, how could he afford to worry so much? Don't you want to kill me? Come on. Hearing this, Sianian fodder number 1 was instantly furious. He lunged forward, brandishing his long sword. Faced with the successive attacks, Chrome finally decided to stop hiding and unleash. In an instant, endless green light surged around him. Before Sianian fodder number 1 could finish his threat, he heard the sound of shattering bones and splashing blood. Because his body was instantly split in two by Chrome's claws, he even watched his lower body fly away before. He slowly closed his eyes. Jeff, the golden-haired man hiding behind, was already scared witless. Although Carmela immediately recognized that it might not be a skill. But what exactly happened, he couldn't say. Conversely, Chrome was surprisingly calm. He had never killed anyone before, but it felt more natural than ever. Perhaps it was a life instinct triggered by impending danger. Or perhaps he was a monster all along. The terrifying scene caused a collective panic among the members of the evil dragon. They were well aware of their own abilities, and knew they couldn't possibly capture such a monster alive, but facing the oncoming monster, they could only raise their bows and arrows. But this time, as expected, they were all useless. No arrow could successfully pierce the monster's skin. None of their arrows could penetrate the monster's hide. Useless tools were discarded one by one. His only remaining support was the long sword in his hand. But don't think that Chrome has an absolute advantage. Although the monster's body gave him great convenience, His dangerously low health and mana made him very wary of these dense attacks. So a head-on confrontation is clearly unsuitable. His most powerful weapon now is to utilize the panic of the evil dragon members. Facing the oncoming club, Chrome didn't dodge. Instead, he forcefully caught it with both hands. This would leave him with a huge opening. Sure enough, a reckless young man presumptuously charged forward. At that moment, Chrome forcefully kicked off the ground, shoving away the club while letting out a piercing roar. The overwhelming pressure instantly stunned the greenhorn, and in that split second of distraction, Chrome easily slapped the opponent's weapon away with a single palm strike. Immediately afterward, his sharp fingertips swiftly sliced across the opponent's neck. A head flew into the air. Without a moment's pause, Chrome immediately changed direction and charged towards the club-wielding man. The club-wielding man, however, was completely stunned by the monster's series of actions. Completely unprepared, I could only use my face to take the full force of his punch. The result was my brain splattering, blood flowing everywhere, successfully killing 2 in a row leveled Chrome up again. The supplies I gained were crucial for the biggest battle yet to come. Everyone saw how powerful the monsters were. Continuing the charge would only mean certain death. Canella also saw the worry in her team members' eyes. This situation was clearly extremely bad. My own members are becoming more and more afraid. They've even lost their will to fight. But the monsters ahead have abandoned any thought of retreat. Now they just want to kill as many of us as possible. The severity of the situation has exceeded expectations. But there's nothing we can do. The small fry are all dead. And the 2 mages can't possibly charge into battle. So the rest of us had to grit our teeth and go. The plan was to use the opportunity while my teammates fought the monster, for Han Carnella and another mage to provide ranged support. But the reality was, we never had a chance to attack. That monster always conveniently hid behind our teammates. We couldn't fire on our own teammates. But Carnella quickly noticed something was wrong. That monster keeps staring in my direction. In other words, it's deliberately positioning itself to prevent me from attacking. The monster actually possesses intelligence. This is completely beyond Canra's understanding. However, Chrome, who is in a stalemate, isn't doing much better, because these 2 are clearly much stronger than those before. Plus, there are 2 more mages in the distance constantly watching me. I can't let myself continue to be consumed like this. So this time, he focused his attack on one of them. But while successfully killing his opponent, he inevitably took an arrow to his stomach. His body could no longer withstand the damage. But this was also part of Chrome's plan. Just as the man thought he was about to succeed, a sharp pain suddenly struck his abdomen, and his body was hoisted high in the air. Without the slightest hesitation, Chrome immediately dragged his body forward. His target was the 2 mages not far away. Canella was completely dumbfounded, completely forgetting to cast magic. Fortunately, his teammate promptly reminded him, and without hesitation, began to cast fireballs. Even though the swordsman in the monster's hand wasn't quite dead yet, he recklessly threw the fireball. A violent explosion instantly erupted, unleashing more flames. The entire cave was illuminated. Although it was to stop the monster's advance, killing his teammates still left the man feeling somewhat uneasy. However, unseen by him, the system prompt announcing successful experience gain sounded again. The monster walked unharmed from the flames. The man thought he could cast his magic again before the monster arrived, but clearly, he underestimated its speed. Airdrops are difficult. 674 experience points obtained again. Chrome's level successfully reached 49. Only then did Garrod understand. The claim that this fellow single-handedly killed the demon ape was no exaggeration, and he would personally greet this interesting man. The final battle is imminent. Garrod, wielding a giant axe, strikes first. The seemingly crude weapon displays surprising speed. The continuous attacks give Chrome no chance to counter. A strange, backhanded strike, immediately followed by a crimson afterimage in the air. A simple probe nearly cost him his head. Chrome couldn't help but be astonished by Garrod's strength. Looking at the other party's information window, although the other party is only 1 level higher than him, but unfortunately, his current condition is really too bad. For the freedom of Udfir, he's quite willing to sacrifice himself and die together with the other party. However, at this moment, even that is probably a vain hope. So he must do something to turn the situation around. It's quite obvious that the giant axe with the flickering red glow is the root cause of all this. So Chrome decided to use his last bit of magic, to fully restore his left arm to its peak condition. Immediately afterward, he unhesitatingly launched an attack on Garrod. Seeing this, Garrod's face lit up with excitement. Blood Denial swung out again. This time, as expected, it successfully hit its target. But a flicker of surprise, almost imperceptible, crossed Garrod's eyes, because the usually unstoppable axe had stopped. The monster's physical strength far exceeded his expectations. His carelessness gave Chrome the opportunity. Its fangs, a mouthful of them, aimed straight for Garrod's chest, ready to bite. However, Garrod was no mindless pawn. Having been in countless scrapes since childhood, he was well versed in this kind of sneak attack. He never imagined, however, that the monster's real target was the weapon in his hand. Its powerful bite clamped down on the axe. Then, Chrome suddenly flung his head. The giant axe flew right out of his hand. It flew away. Garrod, having come to his senses, was filled with rage. But it was too late. All that awaited him was Chrome's indestructible claws. Exhausted, Chrome seized this last opportunity. He leaped high. He lunged at Garrod's head. Strangely, Garrod showed no sign of retreating. Instead, a smug smile played on his lips. In an instant, his arms were covered in purple crystals. Chrome felt as if 10,000 tons of rock were crashing down on him. It knocked his head to the side. His already weakened body was sent flying several meters away. Ultimately, Chrome miscalculated. Garrod's strength wasn't his giant axe. It was this skill that cloaked him in crystal armor. It was a desperate, wretched family. The mother was forced to prostitute herself to earn money. She was beaten daily by her drunken husband. Even the young boy was driven out to beg. Otherwise, it was limitless, brutal abuse. His mother, herself struggling to survive, repeatedly tried to save her child. The boy, watching, felt immense heartache. He was helpless, powerless to fight back. Until this day, God's mercy finally reached him. Strange purple crystals erupted from his arms. His strength increased many times over. He unexpectedly ended that hateful guy's life. That was the first time he awakened his skill. He thought life would become better because of it. But unexpectedly, his mother only picked up his fallen father. And she looked at him with strange eyes. "You monster." A few words destroyed the last bit of beauty in the boy's heart. So he simply gave up on it all. From that day on, he became the monster in the mouths of the people of Oddfield. Now this monster is staring intently at Chrome on the ground. How about this? Even without weapons, I'm still stronger than you. He wasn't wrong. Chrome, with his magic depleted, had no strength left. Persevere. Breaking through that purple defense line is even more difficult. Is there really no chance? Just then, Jeff on the side suddenly appeared again, stealing the spotlight. He also saw that the situation was now one-sided. So now he began to cheer for the boss without reservation. But unexpectedly, this became Chrome's chance to turn the tables. Just as Garrod's diamond star was bearing down on him, Chrome seized the opportunity and did a roll on the spot, successfully dodging the fierce attack. However, Chrome's body didn't stop there. Instead, he continued rolling forward. What he actually wanted to do was pick up the short sword, then readjust my posture, always ready to attack. But in Garrod's eyes, this is nothing but a futile struggle. You monster, 1 foot already in the grave. What use is that sword to you anymore? That's because he doesn't know. What Chrome is truly about to do is far more than just picking up that sword. Instead, it subtly drew me closer to Jeff. And with one strike, I killed him, took out that stupid guy. With the system announcing Jeff's death, Chrome finally achieved the final upgrade. Garrod, completely unaware, stared strangely ahead. He couldn't understand why the man was just standing there. Was he planning to give up? At that moment, Chrome heard the voice permitting evolution in his mind. A monster's evolution brings it closer to its ideal state. But Chrome's dream from the beginning was to one day regain his human form. But now, he dared not harbor such a luxury. To defeat Garrod and save Oddfield, or to protect Sherry and survive together. Chrome now only desired the strength to overcome everything. For that, he was willing to accept any form. No matter how monstrous he became. A piercing roar echoed through the cavern. Thick black mist continuously poured from his body. A strange feeling washed over Garrod. He didn't understand what kind of strange magic it was. Until the clamor subsided, Chrome's figure reappeared in the mist. Only this time, he had become a horrifying monster. Strange vines sprouted from his bald head. His eyes were now borne on long, withered arms. The price of abandoning his human form was that he became an awakener capable of manipulating illusions, while his appearance instilled fear. He also possessed the power to strike at the soul. He could even evolve during battle. This was something Garrod hadn't anticipated, but this didn't affect his beating up this guy. The same diamond star fist came again in quick succession. The difference is, this time Chrome didn't dodge. Instead, he took it head-on. Meanwhile, his other two hands weren't idle either. A faint blue glow quietly appeared, while reaching into Garrod's stomach. It seems he also took something else. That's Chrome's evolved Soul Eater skill. While stealing the opponent's memories, it can also steal the opponent's magic to replenish itself. This means Chrome can use regeneration without worry, and can also fight endlessly. The pain-free Garrod retreated repeatedly, but more than that, he felt inner unease. The sudden loss of power made him wary of the monster before him. He didn't understand what had happened. He just had a gut feeling that he couldn't continue like this. So he immediately called out loudly to his subordinates who were standing there dumbfounded. Even the powers he once looked down upon, he now had to mobilize them all. However, before Chrome, all of this was futile. As the eyeball on my back opened, the surrounding vision immediately became distorted. But thankfully, the arrow still successfully flew. Canella's fireball also precisely hit the monster. The excited Canella was about to exclaim, but when he looked closely, he discovered that the monster before him was strangely twisting, replaced by a chest with a sword in it. The boss, billowing black smoke from his body. Canella was terrified. But more than that, he was confused. He clearly hit a monster. Garrod was about to go crazy. At this moment, he truly regretted asking those two idiots for help, but he seemed to have forgotten that he was still on the front lines. After successfully resolving the interference of the dragon's rain-blocking spell, Chrome's claws attacked again. As expected, Garrod paid the price for his distraction. Resupplied, Chrome gradually gained the upper hand. Garrod was left with only death. Garrod, scorned, was furious. He was about to fight Chrome desperately, but consumed by rage. His attacks became chaotic and disorganized. Not only did I not hit the target once, but the monster easily broke free. Garrod guessed that it must be the aura surrounding the monster that deflected the attacks. It manipulates one's inner fear, making one's mind a mess. So Chrome hesitated to try again, to use the illusion again. Garrod deliberately clung to his inner resolve. He constantly cautioned himself to remain rational, but when the image truly appeared before him, he couldn't help but feel his heart pounding violently, because it was his father's face. His father, covered in blood, angrily questioned him. "Garrod, you dare kill me?" The childhood terror washed over him. Garrod's legs began to tremble uncontrollably, but that was all. "Go back to hell. I'm not that powerless little brat anymore." A roar completely dispelled the gloom, and allowed Garrod's reason to reclaim the high ground. His fist, studded with purple crystals, smashed into the monster's head. He looked at the monster lying on the ground. Garrod finally regained his confidence. With such a petty trick, how could he possibly defeat himself? However, as the scene before him twisted, the little trick he had scorned had still gotten him. Because what he had struck down was not a monster, but his mother, now lying in a pool of blood. Garrod's face was filled with disbelief. This was what he least wanted to be reminded of. He was also the one who hurt him the most. His hard-won, stable Tao heart completely crumbled. His thoughts once again fell into the shadows of his childhood. At this moment, he reverted to his younger self. A shadowy figure, whose face he couldn't see, kept approaching him. Although his reason told him it was all false, his heart couldn't help but feel afraid. "How dare you attack your own father? Bastards like you will be dismembered and fed to the dogs." Amidst the escalating pressure, he desperately tried to push the other away, but found he couldn't muster any strength. He had reverted to his weakest, most helpless self. Powerless cries filled Garrod's mind. And in reality, he was equally powerless to resist, for Chrome's claw marks covered his entire body. Gained 2,868 experience points. Leveled up from 50 to 51. The cold, mechanical voice announced it as always. But now, it sounded more like an elegy for Garrod. The small town, ravaged by the evil dragon, was finally liberated. But who will save the warrior who became a monster because of it? Garrod, covered in wounds, was slowly losing his life. But Crom, staring intently at him, remained long unable to calm down. Defeating the evil dragon leader was indeed unexpected. But even more surprising was the earth-shattering changes his third evolution brought. He could feel the power contained within these hands. One was the creation of illusions, phantoms that swallowed the opponent's heart. The other was the soul-devouring hand, capable of stealing the opponent's memories and magical power. Unknowingly, Chrome has accepted this body. But at the same time, he still has some unfinished business to attend to. Garrod's fall was undoubtedly a huge blow to Canella. But for the other fish party members, it was more a matter of worrying about their own safety, to the extent that Chrome only roared symbolically a few times, and they were both scared into a hasty retreat. Canella completely forgot about his trembling legs. Fortunately, Chrome never intended to kill them. After all, a leaderless evil dragon guild couldn't stir up much trouble. In contrast, Chrome needed to consider where he should go from here. Now that the demon ape is dead, and the evil dragons are defeated, the promises I made to the children have all been fulfilled. They will certainly be able to live peaceful and happy lives. But how can I fulfill the promises I made to myself? From Zelina's terrified expression, you can see that this is fading away. She must be very shocked. After all, who would have thought that the adventurer traveling with them would be such a horrifying monster? But perhaps this isn't such a bad thing after all, because Chrome has already revealed his identity in town. Leaving Oldfield is inevitable for him. If Shirley heard this news from the villagers, given his personality, he certainly wouldn't believe it. The end result might be that he would follow me again, so letting him confirm it with his own eyes might be the best. Thinking this, Chrome felt even more. It's possible that what he needs to leave behind isn't just Oddfell. Perhaps he should distance himself from the entire civilized world. From the beginning to the end, all he's been pursuing is escape. After all, he's already dead. He's just a monster now. No matter how well he disguises himself, it can't change this undeniable fact. Even if I could be reunited with my sister in the future, it would probably still be just like today. So leaving might be the best choice for him. It's not that Chrome wants to portray himself as some tragic figure. After all, the weak and incompetent me from the past can now accomplish the feat of saving the town. That alone is enough for him to be proud of. It's just that he's unsure about Shelley's resolve. He may have underestimated him. Despite the double blow to his body and mind, Shirley found even standing up exceptionally difficult. But he still resolutely hugged Chrome, who was about to leave. The sudden action startled Chrome. Little did he know that Shirley was equally confused. He didn't know what he wanted to do either. I'm even less sure which choice is the right one. But at this moment, he could clearly feel the loneliness in Chrome's heart. So I think I have to give you a hug. The girl's warmth did make Chrome's heart tremble. But right now, he didn't know how to respond. He just stared blankly at the girl. He timidly withdrew his hand. Saying you're not afraid is definitely a lie. After all, Sherry's wildly beating heart reveals everything. But in this fog of mystery, there's one thing he's absolutely certain of. That is, Chrome, you're definitely a good person. Considering everything that's happened, Shirley finally understood why this man always acted alone. Why he was afraid of being seen. He was indeed hiding his monstrous identity. But even so, in the end, he still saved the town. And entered the disaster whole with it. The most crucial thing is, he really did it. Shirley immediately decided to help Chrome stay in town, to show her determination. Shirley even deliberately raised her voice. Little did she know, this caused her already weak body to lose its last bit of strength. Shirley uncontrollably fell down, and naturally landed in Chrome's arms. Shirley truly possesses a pure heart. Because she genuinely believes the town might accept Chrome. Looking at this innocent girl, a wave of emotion washed over Chrome. She was so badly injured, yet she still tried her best to help him, holding on until the very end. Her words were truly inspiring. But perhaps forgetting everything about him would have been the best choice for her. Chrome unconsciously kneeled magic in his palm. He instinctively felt that since the soul eater could steal other people's memories, it should also be able to modify them. That's what he thought, and that's what he did. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep, but Shirley woke up in a daze. He was surrounded by people. I was no longer in the disaster cave, but I clearly remembered defeating the demon ape with Chrome, and preparing to face the approaching evil dragon members. How could I suddenly appear here? Right, Chrome. Shirley anxiously asked everyone about a fair-skinned man. But they hadn't seen any human around amidst the monster's roar. After rushing here, you're the only one we could find. Having witnessed everything, Chrome finally left the forest with peace of mind. Sitting alone on the cliff edge, he quietly began to admire his handiwork. For in the golden light, Oddfield looked more like a maiden dancing just for him. It was simply breathtakingly beautiful. Soon, news of the dungeon lord's defeat spread like wildfire. Oddfield finally welcomed a long-awaited celebration. Shirley rightfully became the town's savior. Just as peace returned to the small town, a monster wanted poster appeared on the streets. At first, people couldn't believe that the demonic monkey had truly been defeated, but with the news of the capital sending a new town mayor, all suspicions were dispelled. Everyone could finally live free from the fear of monsters. From that day on, a victory celebration for the brave warrior, Shelley, lasted for several days. But only Sherry knows that the man who truly defeated the monster is missing. The collapse of the evil dragon guild was also likely his doing. Everything should really be credited to Chrome. But where did you go? Shouldn't you be our savior? A monster's portrait was suddenly posted on the tavern wall. A cloaked man stared at it intently, until a girl enthusiastically invited him to drink. The man, startled awake, politely thanked her, and declined. The girl with the ponytail found it hard to understand, because the celebration banquet had been going on for several days, but this guy just sat here staring at the painting, never joining them in the celebrations. Of course, the dungeon was under control, but this doesn't mean we're absolutely safe. The woman rambled on, drunk, but the man didn't respond. Until a familiar figure caught Sherry's attention. He immediately rushed forward to greet him, because his intuition told him that this must be Chrome. But when the man slowly removed his cloak, what was revealed was a completely unfamiliar face. The embarrassed Shirley quickly explained that she had mistaken the person. She'd gotten the wrong person. She continuously apologized for her recklessness. The little incident didn't affect the townspeople's revelry. The man also left on his own. But as his palm swept across his face, a blue light flashed. What reappeared was unmistakably Chrome's face. He didn't actually intend to deceive Sherry. After all, he couldn't just run around with a face everyone recognizes. Although the third evolution doubled his magical power, allowing him to maintain his disguise for over a day. Even if he were discovered, he could still use illusions to deceive others. At worst, he could erase their memories. But it was still a bit troublesome. And arbitrarily interfering with other people's memories always gives a very evil feeling. So his departure this time was not to escape. On the contrary, Chrome left to continue pursuing his own goals. Actually, this is also thanks to Sherry. It was his approval that gave me immense encouragement. and it gave him more courage to face Camille in the future. So this time, he decided to return to his hometown, Clodator. Meanwhile, in a luxurious room on the other side, two men were plotting something. I heard you can control the dungeon disaster. Is that true? The frail-looking elder spoke first. Across from me sits a richly dressed, red-haired young man whose every move exudes confidence. Yes, Lord Mesdo. We, the Devon Marsh, are an alchemic organization that studies the secrets of the dungeons. Through centuries of accumulated research, we can now control the dungeon's calamities. Mesdo's expression brightened instantly. It sounds like the fate of the world is in your hands. But why come to a humble city lord like me? Instead of going to the royal family, a faint smile appeared on the man's lips. He seemed to have anticipated this question. Of course, it's because you better understand the greatness of this endeavor. And you will also respect us researchers more. The Talon of Devon has not never cooperated with the rulers of the world. However, historical experience has taught them, when these monarchs achieve their goals, these so-called heroes, will be discarded. Over time, the country and the people will begin to take it for granted. They will no longer feel gratitude, even if we stand in their way. We will be considered enemies. But if we can secretly use this power to control the world, isn't this a more interesting proposal? But before we launch this plan, we need sufficient influence. So, Lord Masato, we will make you the king of this world. The Devon's Claw will also serve you wholeheartedly. Masato was shocked by this crazy idea, but I have to say, it's certainly a tempting plan. Mesdo's eyes lit up. On the surface, he seemed to be scolding Ash. He clearly possessed the power to save the world, yet he acted like a demon. But inwardly, he couldn't help but approve of this pervert. However, Ash, having reseated himself, raised a new question at this time. Because they couldn't control the disasters at will either. Before that, very complex preparations are needed. For example, to cope with the different states of the abyss, they need a sufficient amount of dark magic, and to actually use it requires even more conditions. With a series of problems laid out on the table, Mez had to reconsider the abilities of the Devon's Claw. I'm afraid that before I get his support, Aisha also had to present sufficiently convincing evidence. Therefore, the prepared Aisha pulled a map from his bosom. Their primary target was Haven, a city with serious trade problems. The source of this problem was the existence of a larger and wealthier city to its north, Rockdart. Then Aisha made a bold assumption. What if the dungeon disaster happened to occur in Rockdart? Then wouldn't his money and goods flow to Haven? Listening to this interesting plan, Mesdo's eyes were instantly rekindled with hope. He had even more anticipation for Ash's contribution. However, just as they were about to reach Rockdart, Crom encountered a monster. Fortunately, this three-eyed white wolf was only level 16, making it a good test subject. Crom had an idea. He wasn't sure if it would work, so when the white wolf lunged at him, he didn't strike to kill. Instead, he adjusted his stance and aimed for the wolf's head. Immediately, a familiar blue glow coated his dark claws again, as the Soul Eater's eye on the back of his hand opened. The white wolf's magic surged towards Crom, but this process only lasted a few seconds. He broke free. Instead, the wolf's claws came at him. This time, Crom didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist into the white wolf's head, knocking it back. He had wanted to try and interfere with the target's memories during the fight. But the reality was, he hadn't even touched the other's memories. When he was thrown off by the white wolf, to effectively control memories, it could only be done after defeating the opponent. Clearly, this wasn't applicable to more agile monsters. All he could do was plunder their magic. That was all. Having reached a conclusion, Crom decided not to waste any more time. With a swift leap, I quickly flew over the white wolf's body, accompanied by the system prompt of 3 experience points. The white wolf's body instantly disintegrated, turning into several pieces of minced meat. Crom knew that the greater the level difference, the less experience he would gain, but these 3 points were truly absurd. However, another matter was even more puzzling to him. That's because he had never seen such a monster before, and at such close proximity to Cloda. This level of monster shouldn't exist. An ominous feeling welled up inside him. His intuition told him that something not belonging here had appeared in Cloda. But Crom still prayed that it was all just his imagination. Within the bustling city, the late-night tavern was still full of guests. But Arthur was frowning, worried about not being able to recruit new members, although his best friend was trying his best to comfort him, saying that it wasn't an easy task to begin with. Arthur still felt that things weren't that simple. He was sure that people were avoiding them, and the reason was self-evident. Shortly after that incident, they were stopped by a girl. "She's that guy's sister. My brother was last seen going into the dungeon with you." Arthur immediately understood the girl's intentions, but he didn't admit it right away. Then the girl's face darkened. "Fine, I'll just say it. You took my brother into the dungeon. Then, for some reason, you ran away to save yourselves, leaving him there, right?" Though it's unclear how he knew, what he said was completely accurate. So Arthur had reason to believe. It was that girl who spread the news. He even felt. Lately, people have started gossiping about them behind their backs. Arthur's intense self-doubt is starting to drive him crazy. His best friend across from him gives him a concerned look. Arthur, what's wrong with you? Since that last incident, you've been acting very strangely. However, unexpectedly, this sensitive topic completely ignited Arthur. He immediately grabbed his brother's collar and scolded him not to mention that incident again, and he didn't think it was his fault. If anyone was to blame, it was that kid's own bad luck. Such a low level and he still led them the wrong way. It almost caused them all to die in the monster's lair. If it weren't for my wise decision, all of us would have died. Arthur became more and more agitated. I almost ended up on top of the headscarf man. But one thing he became increasingly certain of, was that he was not wrong. He wasn't a murderer. So why did that girl look at him like that? For spreading those rumors about us. I won't forgive him. Meanwhile, Crom, finally back home, was still uncontrollably nervous. Although he kept telling himself he wouldn't be discovered. But the more he did, the more unnatural his behavior became. His timid and shrinking appearance made it hard not to mistake him for a thief. Meanwhile, Camille was diligently practicing magic in her room. A lifelike ice bird stood proudly within the magic circle. Clearly, his control over magic had improved significantly, but Camille still felt it wasn't enough. He needed to become faster and stronger. Crom, witnessing everything from outside the window, felt a pang of sympathy. It's Camille, after all, practicing magic this late at night. Crom couldn't help but feel that just watching was pretty good too. The key was, what excuse would he use to leave after seeing him? After all, he still needs to constantly upgrade and evolve to have a chance to restore his human appearance. And Camille's condition doesn't seem to be anything to worry about. I don't seem to need to show myself. Maybe just seeing him doing well is enough. In just a short while, Camille's desk was already piled high with various animals. It's clear that he's also quite tired. He slowly stood up. Are you going to rest? Crom, hiding outside the window, guessed. But just then, Camille took a dagger from the drawer. Crom recognized it instantly as the weapon he had once used. And at that moment, Camille suddenly seemed like a different person. She completely lacked the resolute look she had while practicing magic just now. Tears welled up in his eyes. The worst part was, he said he was going to find his brother right away. This terrified Crom. He immediately broke the window without hesitation. Camille, startled, immediately raised her dagger towards the window. But when she saw who it was, Camille was so shocked she couldn't speak for a while. He couldn't believe his brother was still alive. Only after it became undeniable did he angrily blame his brother for taking such dangerous risks. Just like every time before he left, he had cautioned his brother. Camille didn't know why she was shouting. She had so much she wanted to say to her brother, until Crom's apology. The room fell silent. He put his arm around Camille's shoulder and whispered softly, "It's true, how could I not worry? You've been looking for me too, haven't you?" His already fragile emotions finally crumbled. Camille could no longer hold back and threw herself into her brother's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "You're right, you idiot." But before Camille could properly enjoy this long-awaited reunion, Crom indicated that he had to leave immediately. Camille didn't understand. She couldn't understand why she couldn't stay at her own home. Even more, she didn't understand what had happened to Crom during this time. To this, Crom could only offer his apologies. It wasn't just these things, it couldn't be explained in a few words. More importantly, he didn't want to reveal his monstrous identity so soon. After all, as long as he continued to evolve, he still had a chance of returning to his human form. Although his last choice had made him look much more terrifying, he still believed he could recover from it. And by then, my level should be very high as well. He thought back to his weaker self in those days. Crom couldn't help but sigh. That was the day he buried his parents. Camille cried her heart out. As the only man in the family, Crom had to pull himself together. So he promised his sister that one day, he would become a hero and protect her. He would change the world. Let what happened to my parents never happen to anyone else. Youthful ambition should soar to the clouds, that describes Crom at the time. So when those unjust fates later befell him, it's easy to imagine how much pain he was in. But it must be said, it was precisely these fates and identities he hated that allowed him to grow into the powerful person he is today. Therefore, he must continue. He will use a deformed and rugged path to achieve his great ideals. So, I'm sorry, Camille. I promise that after I become strong enough, I will definitely return. After saying this, Crom left without looking back. By the time Camille reacted and chased after him, the empty street was already devoid of any figures. All was quiet, as if nothing had happened tonight. Meanwhile, the observation tower overlooking the entire city inexplicably flickered several times. Kevin, who was responsible for its upkeep, was still fast asleep, until a series of buzzing sounds abruptly woke him. He then discovered that the sensors were flashing in an unprecedented manner. A puzzled Kevin initially thought it was a malfunction, but when he went to the window to verify his guess, He was instantly startled wide-eyed by the sight before him. He saw a group of monsters he had never seen before attacking. The alpha wolf, leading the pack, was completely black, and its size was several times larger than its peers. Its true identity was actually a lord cultivated by the Master of Devon. Just half an hour ago, a silver-haired girl entered the dungeon. Seeing Fenrir, which had grown to this extent in less than 100 days, the girl couldn't help but admire her owner's genius. But Fenrir didn't seem to recognize the girl. It opened its bloody mouth and lunged at her, until a purple orb was pulled out from the girl's pocket. A familiar scent rushed towards it, the magic imbued with her owner's scent. Fenrir immediately reacted. This human, who looked somewhat demonic, must be sent by the master. So I could only obediently follow his orders and leave the dungeon. And this means, when Kevin discovered the beast horde, the silver-haired girl wasn't far from him. There weren't many fighters in the watchtower. Only the sound of malice piercing flesh. But it wasn't Kevin who was injured, as imagined. But it was the girl who suddenly appeared. As guardians of the city, who hasn't been through countless battles, Kevin naturally sensed the danger. The moment it appeared, and he immediately made the right choice. The girl found it unbelievable. She couldn't believe that such a grown man would so readily try to kill her, a girl. That's because Kevin sensed the opponent was far stronger than himself, and judging from his gradually healing wounds, he knew that stabbing him repeatedly would be pointless. So, more importantly, before completely killing the opponent, he needed to relay the news of the monster invasion in time. However, the girl wouldn't give him that chance. Faced with the spear lunging at him again, the girl simply smiled faintly. Then, at the moment of the impending attack, he vanished from his spot. The gigantic scythe, disproportionate to his size, carved a long red streak across the air. Immediately afterwards, as expected, the red streak landed on the man's back. The searing pain of the laceration instantly rendered him combat ineffective. Only then did Kevin understand. The difference in their strength was simply astronomical. He had been utterly superfluous in attacking. He looked at the dying man. The girl, instead, felt apologetic. To be honest, I still quite enjoy the thrill of pain. I just don't know if you enjoy it too. Saying that, the giant scythe slowly approached Kevin's wound. Then the girl gently cupped his face. Tell me where the city's armed forces are located. Kevin, of course, understood what she wanted, so he naturally refused to tell her. The price for this was the scythe piercing deeply into his bones. The intense pain instantly rendered him unconscious. But at that moment, the girl revealed a strange smile. His palm twitched slightly. Intense golden light rapidly repaired his damaged body. Kevin slowly regained consciousness, his shock slowly fading. He wondered why his enemy would heal him. The answer is self-evident. The girl asked the same question again. Kevin didn't want to die. He couldn't die, not because he was afraid, but because he hadn't yet informed everyone. With this powerful will, he endured countless tortures. Until the girl started to find him boring, finally giving up on tormenting this uninteresting fellow. By then, his mind was still filled with his own conviction. Is anyone out there listening? Please, protect Clodot. And the other person who held this conviction was wandering the streets at night. Now he wouldn't come looking for me in that dangerous dungeon anymore. Lost in his joy, Chrome didn't notice the person approaching. The result was a full-bodied collision. He also received a scolding, but when he saw the person's face, Chrome froze on the spot. Scenes from the past reappeared. It was a face he would never forget until his death. Arthur Chrome. You bastard, you're not dead. Arthur immediately recognized him. But obviously, he didn't believe it. After all, there were so many insects back then, they would have eaten him to the bone. The only explanation is that he was resurrected by a resurrection skill, but Arthur still found it hard to understand, because even if Chrome had come back to life, with his abilities, he couldn't have possibly escaped that underground city alone. What's more, before today, he had never even met Chrome, so no matter how he thought about it, it still seemed very strange. In contrast, it's Chrome, the victim, who is far calmer. He's more concerned about whether his face will always cause him such unnecessary trouble. Perhaps he should use illusion magic to change his appearance, but on second thought, that's not realistic. After all, it would constantly drain his magic, so he should be more careful, avoiding running into acquaintances like today. But anyway, he felt Arthur was the only one who shouldn't blame him for his unexplained disappearance. However, reality always goes against expectations. When Crom looked closely by the moonlight, he found that Arthur was now stooped. His cheeks were sunken, and his eyes were vacant. He was listless. It was hard not to think of him as a drug addict. And at this moment, he suddenly and inexplicably went berserk. Taking out the parts means a final battle with Chrome, because he finally understood. It must be Chrome, returned as a demon to claim his life. Chrome was dumbfounded. What's going on? Turned into a monster. Arthur guessed half right. But he really didn't come back to seek revenge on him. But Arthur at this moment has clearly lost his mind. It's because I threw you into hell that you harbor resentment towards me, right? Years of accumulated mental pressure has long since caused him to transform his inner guilt into endless killing intent towards Chrome. At this time, Chrome also noticed that Arthur's mental state was wrong. To continue entangling with him here would likely soon attract the attention of others, so Chrome slowly reached for his own equipment. However, this precisely confirmed Arthur's guess. I knew you really came to kill me. Chrome is truly doomed. Wasn't it you who drew your sword first? I will definitely send you back to hell, you unskilled laborer. Arthur muttered trash talk as he fought. He vented his anger. But his fighting skills were really mediocre. I don't know if it's because he's not thinking clearly, but of all the people Arthur might meet in this small town of Chrome, he's definitely the worst so far. But the question is, how should I deal with him? I can't just kill him. So when Arthur attacked again, Chrome deliberately stepped aside. While blocking the attack, he quickly reversed his sword hilt. Then he forcefully struck Arthur's Tanjong acupoint. An intense feeling of suffocation instantly struck him. Arthur's body went limp. He directly knelt on the ground. After all, Chrome's current level is more than double his. Killing him would be incredibly easy, but Arthur didn't deserve to die. Chrome only hoped to use this to calm him down. However, he ultimately oversimplified things. Arthur was too fixated on what happened back then. On the one hand, he believed that someone already dead couldn't possibly appear before him. On the other hand, he refused to accept being defeated by someone he considered a nobody. So, regardless of the reason, he can't fall here. A raging fire instantly climbed the entire blade. Even if you can block my sword, you can't block my flames, he roared, attacking Chrome again. But no matter how hard he tried, he was no longer Chrome's match. Even though Chrome only lightly hooked his ankle while crouching, Arthur was thrown off balance. He couldn't even hold his sword steady, and flew out. While Arthur was crawling towards his weapon, Chrome, still unconvinced, kept explaining, saying he really was human, and didn't want revenge. But then Arthur suddenly turned around, and furiously accused him of lying. You just want to deceive me, and then eat me. At this point, Chrome finally understood. It was impossible to persuade Arthur, because this guy he's insane. Since that's the case, then Chrome had no choice but to use his skills. Meanwhile, a huge breach suddenly appeared in the south of the town. Although all the border guards raised their weapons, it was clear they were terrified. It turned out that a large number of terrifying monsters had appeared in the town. The monstrous roars also caught Chrome's attention. His sensitive nature immediately identified them as the cries of monsters. The same sound, the same place. This inevitably reminded him of a scene from 10 years ago, because his parents died on that day. And the perilous situation threatening their home seemed to sober Arthur up a bit. Only, in his understanding, there were no unusual phenomena in the nearby dungeons. Just then, Arthur was suddenly struck by something. He thought of a terrible truth. It must have been that devil, Chrome, who brought those monsters in. I'm sure of it. It must be so. Chrome is driving him crazy. How much more nonsense does he have to put up with? This also meant that Chrome could delay no longer. He needed to erase Arthur's memories as quickly as possible. However, just as he was about to act, a figure suddenly burst in. Chrome quickly stopped what he was doing in fright. Fortunately, the other person didn't notice. They both continued on their way. However, the infuriating Arthur suddenly stopped him. Unable to fight Chrome, he hurriedly asked the girl for help. Judging by his attire, he should also be an adventurer. But the girl didn't want to pay him any attention, saying she still had a mission to complete. But this guy wouldn't give up. He even blamed Chrome for the monsters that invaded the town. Chrome naturally had to defend himself, because he didn't do it. And of course, the girl didn't believe him, because he actually did it. But this made Arthur, the fool, extremely anxious. Even with his pale face, he kept explaining to the girl. Gradually, Chrome began to notice something strange. Because the girl gave him an ominous feeling, he found his heart felt as if it were being summoned. He felt himself being drawn closer to the girl. This feeling was very bad. He immediately scolded Arthur to leave the girl. Unfortunately, it was too late. Just as Arthur turned around, the huge scythe cruelly ripped through his back. The girl couldn't stand this boisterous fellow any longer and said it was impossible. Impossible, because I was the one who let those monsters in. On the Yandra's face, a mischievous smile flickered. It was truly chilling to behold. Arthur was now trembling in pain. But he still didn't seem to understand what was going on. Generally speaking, when the mastermind actively drops their disguise, that means you're done for. Only this time, Chrome stopped it. This left the girl quite puzzled. After all, weren't those two just fighting a moment ago? Indeed. But that doesn't mean I can let you kill. Chrome's eyes were resolute. He stared intently at the girl before him. He knew this girl must have information about the monster. So he had to defeat her as quickly as possible, and rush to the south of the city for support. But obviously, the girl didn't take him seriously at all. She just saw him as a blindly brave fool, if it weren't for his mission. He had to deliver the blood to the town center. He rather enjoys the pleasure of slowly tearing his opponent to shreds. So, on the point of a quick resolution, the two of them unexpectedly reached a consensus. The battle is about to begin. The first to strike is the psychopathic girl who loves the thrill of a knife's edge, while the monster warrior, the audience's favorite, blocks with a crossarrow. As for this battle's bravest vanguard, the camera, as expected, focuses on the only audience member present, Arthur. At that moment, he seemed full of doubt. He still couldn't understand why Chrome would pretend to protect him. As a former abuser, he believed the Chrome he knew was dead. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape that hellhole. Before that, he had indeed heard rumors of corpses absorbing dark magic and becoming monsters, but he'd also heard that these monsters would forget all their past resentments. He originally thought it was all nonsense. But now it seems, could it be that Chrome didn't really come back to kill himself? It's just that Chrome doesn't have time to deal with this idiot right now. The girl's power brought him unprecedented pressure. This giant weapon even deprived him of the chance to advance. He's as strong as Garrod of the Evil Dragon Guild. No, perhaps even stronger than him. Chrome could feel it. This girl is at least level 50 or higher. In other words, he has reached the limit of an ordinary adventurer. The next step is to accept recruitment, to become a knight. Chrome could hardly imagine encountering such a strong opponent in such a small town. The relentless attacks were almost suffocating him, but thankfully, the girl finally revealed a weakness. Seizing the opportunity, Chrome immediately lunged forward. A horizontal slash finally landed a hit. However, his tense emotions didn't relax. He knew the girl couldn't be defeated so easily, and as he expected, the girl didn't feel the slightest bit of pain. Instead, she showed her appreciation for Chrome. This was completely unexpected for Chrome. Although the wound was shallow, it shouldn't have been completely ineffective, until a golden light appeared in the girl's palm, and the wound on his stomach healed visibly. Chrome realized the situation was far more serious than he had imagined, given that both sides possess healing abilities. Once drawn into this protracted war of attrition, the town's casualties will only worsen. Meanwhile, the girl who was eager to leave is now more belligerent due to the pain. And worse, under Arthur's watchful gaze, Chrome's plan to fight in his true form is no longer feasible, so using illusions to scare his opponent became his only hope. But the girl's fearless demeanor unintentionally added immense difficulty to the tactic. Thus, Chrome could only imbue his blade with magic, then seize an opportunity to unearth the deepest fears in the girl's heart the instant he made contact. However, the girl wasn't entirely as carefree as she appeared. His unprecedented technique caused him to subconsciously heighten his alert, so much so that in facing Chrome's next attack, his defense was almost airtight. He didn't give Chrome a single chance to touch him. Anxiety unconsciously crept onto his face. The observant girl keenly picked up on this. She also unleashed a merciless taunt. Looks like your skills are very mana-consuming. Can you keep it up? Chrome didn't respond, but his slightly trembling body confirmed the girl's guess. Sure enough, when Chrome charged again, he couldn't withstand the girl's counterattack. Not only did he fail to advance an inch, but his sword flew out of his hand. The girl was triumphant, mocking the defeated. He saw through the guy at a glance, but he wouldn't have imagined that it was all Chrome's scheme. By the time he reacted, it was too late. A dry, eerie hand had already appeared before him. Chrome cleverly used the bodies of both to block Arthur's view. Only then did he, without any worries, conjure a claw. He viciously lunged towards the girl's chest. The Soul Eater finally succeeded in activating. The girl's most vulnerable side was finally revealed. But what Chrome never expected was, this time, he seemed to have miscalculated, because the girl's mind was a blank. Nothing at all. Chrome still clearly remembered that Garrod's memories were a city in ruins. Some monsters' memories are of dungeons and vast fields, but this white void, he'd never encountered anything like it before. He'd originally hoped to use it to understand everything about the girl, but now it seems, that's clearly impossible. Until a girl's back suddenly entered his field of vision, Chrome seemed to finally have found a breakthrough. The little girl looked very sad. She kept murmuring about the treatment. From the sound of it, the results weren't good. Curious, Chrome wanted to investigate. But the sight before him chilled him to the bone. He saw various blood-stained tools scattered on the floor, and the dismembered and shattered corpses of mice. And the girl truly wanted to revive. It was a rat that had been genetically modified to have two heads, but for some reason, the girl seemed to be able to see herself. She turned her head and stared straight at herself. As a result, the real Chrome felt a splitting headache. He lay on the ground, unable to calm himself for a long time. He couldn't understand what the girl had been through. In his heart, besides childishly innocent cruelty, there was. Yet, he showed no other emotion. At this moment, the girl seemed to sense something amiss. Although she didn't know what the man had done to her, she absolutely did not want to be threatened in any way. Chrome muttered, "Oh no." Although he had retrieved his sword immediately, he still paid the price for his distraction. The sharp scythe slid towards her body without a doubt. The sheer force even knocked him flying. Under the double blow to his mind and body, Chrome was momentarily stunned. Could this be the end? The girl looked down at Crom on the ground with a mocking gaze. Finally standing up, Crom finally understood that his vaunted illusion was completely ineffective against the girl. The only effective option now was to drop his disguise, restore the monster's power to defeat him. Kayeth saw that a huge commotion was inevitable. It would become common knowledge throughout the town by then. People would be in a panic. At this critical moment of monster invasion, such chaos would undoubtedly be a more fatal blow. But if we continue this stalemate, it will only cause the past to repeat itself. Neither advancing nor retreating is a good option. Crom is really agonizing over this. Arthur, that idiot, is agonizing as well. Despite his lack of strength, it's obvious to anyone with eyes that the situation has turned in the witch's favor, but he's still agonizing over whether Crom really came to kill him. Fortunately, he figured out one thing. That is, after the powerful witch kills Crom, he himself would also be killed. So, the rare idea of the giant coffin finally popped into his head. Arthur took out his only magic stone, and poured all his meager fire magic into it. Just as the witch focused her attack on Crom, he successfully threw it. Luckily, he precisely hit the witch, but unfortunately, the attack didn't inflict any effective damage on her. Instead, it only attracted the witch's hatred. To deal with this impolite fellow, the girl decided to prioritize taking him down. Thus, the unlucky Arthur received another blow. Crom's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected Arthur to choose to help him, but it was clear. His life was now in grave danger. At the critical moment, a blue light, accompanied by the clang of metal, flashed before the girl's eyes. When her vision cleared, she saw that a bizarre-looking monster had blocked her side. The girl's first reaction wasn't fear, it was confusion, because she was certain she hadn't attracted such a monster. So where did it come from? Could it be that guy? Her guess was bold, and correct, although right now, she probably needs to focus on the fight. With the monster's body enhancing him, Crom's power surged. He not only easily broke through the girl's defenses, but before she could even get out of his attack range, he retaliated, slashing her body. The girl, reacting only then, managed to escape the fight with a series of jumps. She could clearly feel how much stronger he had become. It wasn't just because the monster had grown a few extra arms. The key was, the other party also possesses a clear self-awareness. Normally, monsters are characterized by brutality and chaos, but he is completely unburdened by the abyss's hatred and desires. For such a mysterious species, it's hard not to be amazed. The girl even thinks that even that great person might not have anticipated this. However, this will not affect his next plan at all. The girl gripped her weapon tightly. She chanted an obscure incantation. A magic circle, brimming with energy, suddenly appeared beneath her feet. It was the girl's most powerful competitive spell, the Immortal Demon. This spell came at the cost of her life force, accelerating the circulation of energy within her body. This allowed the caster to instantly recover from all injuries while also receiving a comprehensive boost to their attributes. The girl hadn't expected to be pushed to her limits, but undoubtedly, the next battle wouldn't be a game anymore. Mr. Monster's words had barely left his mouth, when the sharp blade plunged accurately into Crom's arm. But that was all. Before the girl could laugh triumphantly, the scythe's blade got stuck in the flesh. I couldn't even move an inch. That's because Crom's other hand was gripping the knife hilt tightly. Sure enough, this was another one of Crom's usual tricks, and it proved to be incredibly effective. The girl, restrained, didn't even have time to react before Crom's third hand slashed her eye viciously. However, the perverse girl wasn't discouraged. Instead, the intense pain excited him to the extreme. Even if his weapon was taken, he didn't care. Anyway, immortality allowed him to endlessly exhaust his opponent. Speaking of which, the eyeballs that had been split in two began to move eerily. After only a few seconds, they had completely recovered. But just then, the giant scythe suddenly flew towards the girl. The girl's face was full of disbelief. He thought that the guy had taken great pains to seize his weapon. So he didn't understand why the other party would return the weapon to him. That's because the girl simply didn't understand that Crom's current strength far surpassed her imagination. He could choose any method to defeat him. So Crom actually doesn't care about that weapon at all. As for what happens next, no matter what kind of magical life energy the girl possesses, Crom will crush it all. The monster warrior's fists pounded his body furiously, but the girl didn't feel pain at all. Instead, she was extremely excited. After all, it's been a long time since anyone could force him to reveal his trump card, and it's from such an unprecedented creature. He couldn't believe there were monsters not controlled by instinct. He even stubbornly protected humans. Besides, didn't the person lying there attack you? The monster's behavior is truly incomprehensible, but it also drove the girl even more insane. Crom ignored the girl's incessant chatter from beginning to end. However, his attacks never stopped. He didn't believe the other's life energy was truly endless, until another punch landed hard on the girl's chin. The sound of a series of shattering cracks came clearly from her broken neck, but the girl, relying on her recovery magic, remained as arrogant as ever. While massaging her newly healed neck with her left hand, she continued to taunt the monster's ignorance. But the next second, a flash of light sped past. The girl's left hand flew off. But the reality was far more than that, because her body was also severed at the waist. As he felt the pain in his abdomen with astonishment, his upper body gradually flew backward. No matter how powerful his healing magic was, it couldn't put his lower half back. It's probably too late to restore her before. The girl's life was rapidly fading. She clearly didn't have long to live. So Chrome turned back to deal with Arthur. But just as he lifted his leg to leave, the girl, using her remaining hand, managed to hoist herself onto Chrome's shoulder. This guy, daring to let his guard down in front of her. He'd drag him down to hell with him, even if it meant his own death. Saying this, he opened his cherry-like mouth, preparing to deliver a fatal blow to Chrome. However, in the face of such a disparity in strength, it was all in vain. Chrome grabbed the girl by the neck, and slammed her to the ground violently. The girl was now near death. Feeling her life nearing its end, she felt not a single trace of sadness, but instead, began to feel pity for the monster before her. If only you could abandon reason. Actually living like a true monster wouldn't be so bad. After all, no matter how much you try to please humans, you'll never receive their love. The girl who was pulled back up. He looked at the monster before him with amusement. Until now, he had never yielded. But he didn't know. Chrome's desire was never to become a hero and gain everyone's attention. He just wanted to, in this chaotic era, alleviate the suffering in people's lives as much as possible, even if it was only a tiny bit. That was all he hoped for. As the girl's head exploded, in this secluded alley, the battle between the monster and the pervert finally came to an end. As for what happens next, I just need to deal with Arthur. Watching the monster slowly approaching, Arthur was terrified, although he seemed to have guessed everything. But this time, he couldn't bring himself to be happy. As the monster's claw reached for his head, Arthur felt as if his soul had been ripped out. His body was completely paralyzed. Darkness instantly enveloped him. When he regained consciousness, he was no longer in the familiar town. Instead, countless eerie eyes stared fixedly at him. Arthur wanted to scream, but he couldn't make a sound no matter what. Finally, he lost consciousness in intense fear. Actually, that was Crumb intentionally putting him under an illusion. At least in this situation, altering his memories would be easier. Arthur's heavy dark circles under his eyes appeared again. It seems his life hasn't been easy. But whether it's fear or guilt, considering what he did back then, he deserves all this. Chrome had actually considered not touching his memories. After all, every memory is a person's most precious possession, especially given his current mental state. Even if he said he met a monster, probably no one would believe him. It's just that Arthur might cause trouble for Camille. So he had to do it. Some people might wonder why Chrome didn't just kill Arthur at this point. His attitude towards Arthur is incredibly goody two-shoes. Really hard to accept. That's because only Chrome knows that this not-so-strong man was once a good person, at least to him. As the soul-devouring hand probed Arthur's mind, a long-forgotten memory unfolded. The story begins with the first meeting of three boys. The red-haired boy greeted a black-robed boy who passed by. The red-haired boy knew everything about him. He knew the black-robed boy had a resurrection skill that could only be used once. This meant he had no fighting ability, and couldn't level up. That's also the main reason why other teams wouldn't take him. And even for odd jobs, there are always people more suitable than the boy in black robes. But even so, the redhead still extended an invitation. And he promised not to ask him to do anything unreasonable, because he heard that the boy in black robes had a strong desire to become an adventurer. So, since he intends to adventure, then join us. The headscarf-wearing boy nearby also chimed in at this time. From his words, the black-robed boy finally learned that the redhead had also lost his parents when he was young, and his father was also killed by a monster. However, the story took a turn here. The black-robed boy, who should have accepted the invitation, refused this time. This time, he decided to give up on becoming an adventurer. Hearing this, the red-haired boy didn't get angry. Instead, he highly approved of the other's choice. But no matter what, I still really appreciate your invitation. Goodbye, Arthur. The red-haired boy, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped. He was surprised that the black-robed boy knew his name. He was very surprised. But before he could ask for an explanation, the scene was interrupted by Arthur, who had woken up. At that time, Chrome was struggling to drag him to the bustling market. Finally, after seeing a passerby, he entrusted Arthur to him. Arthur, regaining consciousness, looked at the unfamiliar man in front of him with confusion. From him, he learned that he had just been attacked by a strange woman. Arthur's head was splitting. His memories were hazy, but it seems that something like that did happen. It seems you saved me. I haven't seen you before. Are you an adventurer as well? Chrome was very pleased with Arthur's performance. This proves he successfully erased all memories of Arthur from his mind. I'm sure he'll sleep well from now on. But just then, Arthur's pupils suddenly constricted. His body involuntarily knelt before Chrome. The sudden scene left both of them at a loss. Neither of them understood why the man did that. Even Arthur himself didn't know why at that moment. He felt a strong urge, deep inside, to apologize to the man who had saved him. Crom quickly understood, however. It was Arthur's heartfelt repentance, since suppressing his inner fear, and with his memories gone, the crushing guilt had resurfaced. Though Arthur remained utterly confused, but Crom really can't stay any longer, because the monster warriors from the south are imminent. So goodbye, Arthur. He hunts guards. In the cholera town, he's a killer deserving of death. But before the master's assigned task, he's also one who will fight to the death. Even if cut in two, he will resist to the very end, a warrior. And he, for his own survival, chose to betray his teammates. Even if he suffers from guilt every day, it's it cover up the fact of his crime. But it must be admitted that he was indeed a light in the lives of others. Although all evil should be punished, Crom believes that life should also have a chance for redemption. But all of that is no longer his concern, because from today onwards, they are all just passing through his life. What is more worthy of his redemption now, is this small town currently under attack by monsters. Although the three-eyed white wolves aren't high level, there are simply too many of them. These soldiers, already not very strong, now even their morale is completely gone. The human side quickly fell into a disadvantage. All they could do was evacuate the women and children as quickly as possible. However, with a loud roar reaching their ears, the men finally realized the seriousness of the situation, because that was clearly the lord of the dungeon. His appearance. It means the original dungeon has lost its function as a safe haven, because there's no longer a constant supply of dark magic there. Instead, monsters will follow the lord, this mage, and invade this human living area. So, before more monsters arrive here, we must kill this black wolf as soon as possible. But the problem is, he's just an ordinary man. Why does just looking at the monster's eyes, covering their entire bodies, make one's heart pound with fear? The man knew he was no match for these monsters, but for his hometown, he still chose to face everything that could shatter him to pieces. And it was at this moment that a young man stepped forward first. Sir, could you please move back a little? The man saw through the young man's intentions, but even though he was overwhelmed, he still didn't forget to dissuade the young man. No matter who you are, it's impossible to take on so many monsters alone. However, his actions would prove everything to Crom. As he spoke, two three-eyed white wolves had already pounced, and Crom simply waved his blade with nonchalance. They were already two corpses on the ground. Experience remained as scarce as ever, but surprise was anything but lacking. The man stared, dumbfounded, hardly believing his own eyes. He was forced to speculate on the true identity of this young hero. By now, they were surrounded by even more monsters, but for some reason, the man felt no panic at all. The scene just now played out again. The only difference was that there were more monster corpses on the ground. Dealing with these small monsters was effortless for Crom. Although there was a minor incident in between, it didn't have any substantial effect on Crom. Crom turned the hilt of his sword. He smashed the white wolf's head fiercely. Then, with a single slash, he easily took down the wolf pup. Now, with the Soul Eater's magical replenishment, Crom can use regeneration without any inhibitions. The two complement each other. Now, even if more monsters come, he can completely annihilate them. Plus, these wolf pups aren't high level. Crom didn't even need to show his monster form. Everyone witnessed the young hero's strength. Hope rekindled in the villagers' eyes. With the addition of this powerful adventurer, they believed the town would soon escape the crisis. But one person suddenly stopped. It was Arthur's teammate, the Orca man. He was stunned by the hero's appearance. He looked so much like Crom. Did Crom survive? But the man in the headscarf quickly dismissed his own thought. Because Crom didn't have white hair at all, he also didn't possess such immense power. More importantly, he never had such a cold and stern expression. A momentary victory had addled these people's minds. Little did they know, a greater danger was silently approaching. With a tremendous crash, a dark figure slowly emerged from the mist. That body, covered in eyes, was none other than Fenrir, the lord of the dungeon. Witnessing the corpses of his companions scattered everywhere, Fenrir was instantly enraged. A casual flick of his tail unleashed terrifying destructive power. Everyone's tension reached an unprecedented level once more. But even so, they still chose to fight to the death. It's just that Crom said the same thing. Can you all move back a little? Fenrir's outburst of power was indeed intimidating. But it was insignificant before Crom. After all, Fenrir is only level 46, far inferior to the terrifying power of Garode or the Titanate. Crom simply raised a hand. With one strike, a wound was successfully opened on its body. The Fenrir crocodile, in pain, instinctively took 2 steps back. I don't know why, but this human before it always gave it a feeling of deep trepidation. Later facts proved that its intuition was indeed correct. After several rounds of fighting, the Fenrir crocodile had not made the slightest progress. Instead, I've exhausted myself, gasping for breath. But look at Crom. One hand wields Soul Slayer, the other, regeneration. After fighting for so long, his condition remains as full as ever, not to mention Chrome's level is far higher. At this point, Fenrir finally realized something was wrong. Even his greatest strength, endurance, was failing him. Continuing the fight was pointless. He turned to run. However, he seemed to forget this was human territory. The villagers lacked the strength to defeat him, but trapping him wasn't much of a problem. Pre-prepared chains wrapped around the monster's body. Soon, Fenrir was bound hand and foot. But at the same time, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. Fenrir howled desperately in the darkness, but it seemed to have no effect. Instead, I don't know when, a monster suddenly appeared that even he was afraid of. The moment of separation scared him to death. While desperately struggling, I suddenly realized everything was back to normal, except, I had another cut on my neck. Then Fenrir collapsed to the ground, unable to support himself any longer. The new wave of dungeon disaster was completely nipped in the bud, but Crom wasn't happy at all. Because in tonight's series of unexpected events, there were still many things I couldn't explain. For example, why did that girl lead the monster into town? Crom didn't have time to interrogate her at the time, so the specific reason behind it remains unknown. But what is certain is, relevant clues should be found on her. But before going back, she might need to deal with these burning gazes first. The dazzling Crom has clearly become the focus of attention.